I'm here with a gentleman. Most of you may know him as Alan of Salisbury. It's just really crazy because I've been trying to get in touch with this lovely gentleman for many, many months, and in the last few months we've managed to make contact. So, we're going to have a discussion. Alan is going to share his extensive knowledge. I'm going to turn the camera around and literally we are just going to talk like we were. I wanted to share our conversation with you guys and share what Alan knows and everything they're doing there, because there's so much. I just don't want to miss it. So I'm like, we're just going to hit live and go for this. So I'm going to turn the camera around, introduce you to Alan. You are now on camera, Alan.
Well, hi.
So if you guys, I'm sure you can hear us. So I'm going to leave this like this and we're going to talk. And Alan was just explaining some words to me. You asked me if I knew.
Oh, that's right. I thought you'd heard the word futhark.
Who?
Futhark.
Futhark. How do you spell it?
Oh, I'm not sure. But futhark is like a letter F in a runic script.
Right.
So like our alphabet has got the first two letters A and B, alpha, beta. It's called an alphabet. The runic script is called a futhark because the first letter is like an F shape, but the arms go slightly upwards. And if I remember rightly, it means mobile wealth. In other words, the wealth that you carry, because we were talking about money and what.
Yeah, because we were talking about, because what I was saying, obviously, my children were here yesterday and the other day, and we were talking about money, and it's the perception that we all have about money, that we need money to travel, we need money to, for happiness. People believe we need money for happiness.
Well, unfortunately, again, it goes back to the language. What we call money isn't actually money. And we really need to know where that energy comes from. Like money traditionally is defined as weighted metal, and you can measure the length, breadth, width, and weight of it. And in the case of England or Great Britain, it was known as sterling silver. So the quality was of a certain standard as well. And hence we had, it was pound, which is a measure of weight. And so we had the L, which meant pound. And you had two lines that went through that pound sign, which means equal to. So, for example, you'd have a note that would have a pound on it equal to 1. So that would be 1 pound of sterling silver. And the note could be exchangeable to that sterling silver. What we have now is not money, because you used to be able to take that pound note in. It was called a promissory note into the bank, and you could exchange that into the silver if you wanted the silver. But the note was more convenient to carry about. But as with all things to do with legal, there's a certain economy of the truth, shall we say, and a lack of transparency. And so over time and after events, they want us to believe just in the note.
Yeah. And
so they came out with a thing called the Bills of Exchange Act, which meant that if, for example, I wanted to buy a newfangled bicycle with John Boyd Dunlop tyres, as the Victorians had, and I went in there with a note, and you ran the bike shop, and you went, "Oh, I don't want to take that note. What's that? It's only a piece of paper. I want the proper coinage, with the king's head on it or the queen's head on it and stuff." If you refused to take my note, then it meant that payment offered with legal tender and refused counted as payment made. So if you refused that, then that bike would be mine, and I could get a constable to do that. And the other thing is that because you were refusing the legal tender, it also had a picture of the monarch on it. That could be taken as treason as well, that you didn't recognize the monarch. So people went, okay, well, I'll take the note, because they could take the note, then go to the bank and exchange it for the silver later. right? So that's how it first kind of started. That was for what I'm talking about, regular folk on the street.
Yeah.
Obviously, with aristocrats, they had promissory notes for much larger sums of money and paid for things in different ways. The Bank of England, I believe, if you still go there, you can see things called tally sticks, which was a stick that was split down the middle with a sword, which would fit perfectly together, and so it couldn't be forged. And they used that as a kind of an exchange of currency. Well, of course, after the engineered wars and the financing of both sides in those wars, we ended up in a situation where the international usury cartel, or the aliens, if you like, and I'll get back to that later, owned everything. And so they needed to have some form of exchange to carry on commerce. And seeing as they owned everything, the only thing they didn't own was new life. And so they came up with this, a guy called Colonel Mandel House, around about 1933 it came in. It was called the Universal Commercial Code. They sold us, they got us to back the currency. So our enslavement, as in terms of bonded slaves, we became what backed the currency. And so the notes now, if you look at it in your pocket, you still got the pound sign, but it's only got one line through it. Well, one line in maths means minus, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, of course it does.
All right, it's because it's a debt-based currency, and we stand surety for that debt. To get biblical about it, and this is a lot for people to get together, is that in the Bible it says, don't take your father's name in vain, or don't take the Lord's name in vain. Well, your Lord also meant your husband as well. So your surety name, or as it's more commonly known,
your
surname, is not written on your birth certificate, is it?
No.
But that's what makes you liable to stand surety for the debt, and the debt is the currency that's being issued. So we've got a debt-based currency that's in circulation that we stand surety for. I know that sounds crazy, doesn't it?
It is crazy. So we're
the gold.
Oh, Jay, can you do me a favour? Can you put them kittens out there, please, with Mum? So, so we're the gold that backs the bonds.
Yeah,
if you
we're
like.
the energy. If you look at it, it's just energy that backs the debt-based currency. But the question should be: is why is it a debt-based currency?
Yeah.
Because if we're standing surety for it, surely we must be the creditors.
Yeah.
And this is where the economy of truth and sleight of hand comes in, because there is an estimated value to what we can create in terms of energy in our life, you know, in terms of the businesses we do, our creative component, just our basic labor and all the other stuff. For some reason, a bunch of guys sit down and somehow they're able to monetize that and give it a value. And it's not only that, it also goes back to the Roman cult or the Roman church, where they worked out in Unum Sanctum, which is 1302, where the Pope declared that he became the trustee, that the grantor of dominion, God, God, made him the trustee to a trust. So you had the grantor, the trustee being the Pope, and for the beneficiaries, which was us. Okay, so this all goes on through history, but where we're at now is that we've ended up standing surety for all the debts, but we don't have control over the currency. In other words, you could be worth, in their system, £20 million, but you don't get access to that £20 million. Because you're not considered to be a creditor. What they do is they trick you out of that by getting your parents to consent to register your birth, and that up until the age of 7 you don't make a claim on that estate. Again, it comes back to estates. This is a lot of stuff to
but it's interesting. So
what they do, the black magic sorcery of it all, and this goes all the way back to Babylon, and as I said about the alien bit, is they trick you into not being authentic. All right. So they want you to be something that you're not.
Right.
So and if we go back to Francis Bacon, who was one of the guys that was instrumental in this, his main mentor was a guy called Dr. John Dee.
Yes.
He got people to believe by introducing new words into language that they were something that they were not.
Right.
In other words, that you are, without realizing it, an actor. You're not being authentic in your life, because the way that it works is they need to possess you and that account that's worth 20 million or whatever it is. I don't know for sure. That's the figure that's been bandied about. They need to possess that. So they need you to have a thing called an id.
An ID.
Well, id is Old Hebrew for possession. So they need to possess you. You probably know that better as ID.
Yeah.
And they put the word identification over on it. So when someone says, I need to see some ID, they need to know who you're being as an actor. So you're not being yourself, because you can't be yourself, because that's already been monetized. So they need you to be something that's death slightly warmed up.
Yeah.
Because when something's death, you put it on ice. Okay. And it lasts long if you put it on ice. So when they want you to warm up, to interact, to play your part in their play, you're given a not ice or a notice. And you must respond to a not ice. They also have guys that are a bit more warmed up. They're called off icers, like policy off icers, to take you off ice so you can contract. Because what they want is access to that £20 million thing that you don't know you have.
No.
That the banks will have power of attorney over, but they need you to consent to be, well, basically to register, to consent to be a mental health outpatient that's a warmed up version of death. And that's what you consent to be.
That's just
because
crazy.
and the term was bandied about, or as far as we can make out, it was something that Francis Bacon came up. It is that in Tudor England, under Queen Elizabeth I, they never used to say yes or no. They would say yay or nay.
Mm.
So you consent to be a namee.
Name me.
That's where the term name comes from. So when somebody says they want to see some ID, they want id to possess you, they want to know who you're acting as, the role you're acting as. So what's your namee? That's not who you are. That's something that you're not. And also they want your surety namee as well. And those are the links to an account, which is where all the corporations, the dead talking, corpse orating, can get their credit from and balance the books with this debt-based credit form of money. So you end up being the debtor because you're standing surety. So in effect, if you're the gold, everything's already paid for. So they don't want you to know this. So what you have is you have debtors and creditors, and then you have administrators. Mm. Well, the administrators are like the Bar Association. Mm. After King John was a bit naughty, they decided to put in the Knights Templar. They were going to administrate and run things. And very shortly after, Britain was invaded again by the French, and sort of Philip came over. But a guy called William Marshall, who's buried in the Temple Bar.
Right, yeah,
it's all there in the city of London.
Yeah.
He defended the country. He, along with another guy called William of Cassingham, and he was quite a big wig in Kent, really. He was the original Robin Hood.
Right.
And they were able to defeat the French and get the barons on side, because the barons wanted to be on the side of the French because John was such a twat, basically.
Yeah.
So, and then after that, we had the Peasants' Uprising of 1381. It's a whole load of history. This didn't kind of just come up overnight. It just evolves over time. But where we're at now is we're dealing with the debt-based currency that we're all standing surety of. And everything you think you know is in your naming and your surety name, the ID, which isn't you. This is the fact that people need to realize, that when they want to give you a digital ID, it's not you as a woman with a soul, a warm body with the flesh, and all the other stuff. It's a fictional thing that's that's slightly dead. I mean, if you look at the old Fahrenheit readings and instead of Celsius, if you take 33 degrees, that means that's above freezing.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone who's like 33 degrees,
yeah,
all right,
yeah,
they're warmed up, so they have a bit more authority over the off-icers that are kind of handing out not ices to those fictional ids that they possess. And they have to possess them because that's like possessing all the gold to print the money against. They have to possess you to print the money against it, but they administrate over it. And so from the Knights Templar, from William Marshall and all that, it works its way up to after what I call the International Usury Cartel came in, and they bankrupt the country. And I think it might be 1815 that the Bar Association were put in, and they administrate everything because the Bar Association are linked to the Magyars of Venice and the banking dynasties, and they had a thing called Courtio. And Courtio is where you deal with bonds, bails, and sureties. So when you go to their courts of Courtio, they're dealing with bonds, bails, and sureties. They're administrating that account. So if you go into one of the Courtio courts, it's all about money. They need you to consent to be the warmed up version of death. You go in there, you all rise. Yeah. You're summoned to appear like a dead entity. You all rise. And then you have someone to represent your estate. And it used to be estates or plantations. They're called states now, the United States of America. Yeah. But this is how the financial system runs. This is the spell that the bulk of the currency that's in circulation is based on. And it's literally a black magic spell. There's nothing of substance backing it up except for your life, which has been possessed by another entity. And they do this with words of art. Yep. In other words, when you were born, you get converted. Now, conversion as a word of art to someone who's literate, and you may think you're literate, but you're not, has very big meanings. Like, for example, if you've seen the Occult Art of Law, a video that I made about 10 years ago now, the word application is presumed you are a beggar and you know what you're giving up in order to get what you're begging for. All right? Big meaning, just for application. Wow. Let's look at that now. Apps, an abbreviation of apps. Yes. Right? They're collecting your data. It's presumed you know what you're giving up. You're begging for the app, and it's presumed you know what you're giving up, which is all your data and all your information, in order to get what you're begging for. You use a phone that's called an app. Ooh, iPhone. Yeah, yeah. Right? Apps on the iPhone. So everything you talk about, they're gathering, there's a big computer gathering it all up. It's a form of artificial intelligence. And so all of that is then a commodity that can be traded. So data, everything you do is all traded. Your whole life is traded and monetized by these guys, these dark sorcerers. They have to tell you because they know how the universe works. They know if they do evil, it's going to come back on them. So they have to trick you to do the evil for them. And you do by going along with this black magic spell. I mean, what you call money or this currency is the most mood and mind altering substance on the planet. I mean,
it's addictive, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, if I put a couple of, and I've done it again, it's in that, the Occult Art of Law video. If I put bottles of wine on the table, that's mood and mind. Do you want that? You go, well, you might or might not want a drink, or some cocaine, or some hashish, or cannabis, or whatever it is. They're all mood mind altering substances. But if I put $5,000 in and use plastic floppy notes, that's going to change your mood and your mind, isn't it? And so but the difference between that is 100% psychological, as in a spell being cast.
Oh, yes, of course.
Because the other substances, they've got some biological chemical reaction that gives you the mood and mind altering effect. Yeah. Whereas the money stuff, the magic spell that everybody's running after, it's the strings to the puppeteers that are doing it. That's still mood and mind altering, but there's nothing chemical about it at all.
So it's a real, we've developed an obsession with money.
It's an addiction.
It is, yeah. And I mean, I remember when my son was little, it was very similar when we used to go to the arcades and you had those machines, you know, like the hand that grabs the toy and you've got to get it out. And the amount of kids that were addicted because they thought they could get it, but you can't because it's a trick.
Well, exactly. Well, if you look at it, I mean, the classic drug pusher thing that, you know, the drug dealer was hanging out of school giving away free samples. Well, that's credit.
Yeah.
Giving away creek. And then once you get the habit, you don't get the free samples anymore. You've got to do something in order to get your fix. Well, it's the same process. It's the same spell as being cast, you know, like, oh, you want to have something material. Oh, you haven't got any money. Okay, we'll lend you some and then we'll charge you interest on that. And now you're addicted. You've got to pay that off.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you start thinking in that way. It's not, I mean, money was weighted metal. It was a lump of gold, which was an immortal metal. And that literally represented your soul because it was a mortal metal. That this is how the dark sorcerers created these spells that we're all bound by, and we pass those spells on to our children. You know, this is the whole point. The bottom line is it's not natural.
No.
And if it's not natural, then how can it be true?
So are we all under a form of hypnosis right now from a spell that's been cast on us?
Well, hypnosis, mind programming, belief.
Yep.
I mean, for example, which is more powerful, a lump of gold or belief?
At the moment, belief.
Well, you have to believe that the lump of gold has some value, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's all about belief. That's the only real currency there's ever been.
It's your belief, yeah, absolutely.
And so if we go back to the word that I was using, alien, so if you had some, for example, space pirates that landed here, and I say the word alien, you think of the greys with the big eyes or whatever it is, or UFOs and stuff like that. Well, they come down here and they need to cast that spell. So what they do is, and it's there in that one word, they put a lien.
Oh, yeah.
A lien on something.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is a commercial charge. It's about, and the more you don't pay that debt off, the more you're obliged to be controlled with them. So if they come down and they say, all right, we genetically modified you, and they create a people farm, and you're getting the benefits of that people farm, then you owe them. Just like the corporations these days, when they create a new drug or something like that, it's genetically modified, they put a patent out and they own it. And they own you. And this, I mean, what happened when, in this country, 1066, we have the first bunch of pirates with their maritime, Magyar, Phoenician, Babylonian law, magic stuff landing, and Harold kicked their ass at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah.
Then we had the next wave come over. I mean, they're all got to be financed by the same guys, the same families of William the Conqueror. He comes over and we lost. And one of the first things he does is he puts a lien on the whole country. It was called the Doomsday Book.
Right.
That's a lien on the whole country. And also you're allowed to have usury then. That all came in. So since then, we've had various variations of what's called maritime or the law of pirates, core pirates, corporations, the dead talking. It's all part of that spell. And if you want to deal with facts are natural. You can measure the length, breadth, width of something and the weight of it. That's called three-dimensional. And if it exists as a fact, then it exists in linear time, which is four-dimensional. Therefore, for money to have substance, it has to exist as a fact. Well, nothing digital exists as a fact, does it?
No. But we give it the belief it does.
But you believe that it does. And it's all backed by your life. That's the currency.
And is this
you not being who you really are. In other words, you being artificial. This is the whole basis of artificial intelligence. That's artificial is not genuine. It's a fake. It's a fraud.
Yeah.
It's something masquerading that it's not.
Well,
And-
if you say we are an art,
What?
an art, if we are art, they created an art of us.
Yeah.
Isn't that in itself the name art becoming artificial, because it's a fiction?
Yeah.
In the fictional, in the artificial world. So
well, there's lots of art that I like that's real. It's
Yeah.
solid. Michelangelo painters, all the other stuff. It has substance,
yeah,
and we have substance, but they don't recognize they can't recognize we have substance. When you go into their courts, they don't like it if you speak to yourself. You need someone to speak for you, like a barrister. Barrister, two words, stare and barrow. Stare means to stand or to stand for. Barrow means a dunce or an incompetent, somebody that can't speak for themselves. That's where the term comes from.
wow,
And you see, it has to be hidden in plain sight. Like alien.
yeah,
That it does all make sense. Like the word conversion.
yeah,
When you're born, that one word is a huge word. Conversion means to do with the property of another that which is inconsistent of their right. Big long meaning, little word. Those that are literate know what it means. But you think conversion is something you do when you go abroad. You want to convert your pounds into euros on holiday or something like that. Conversion is what the empire did originally to go over to America, to convert the natives into what they call Christianity or something like that, to do with the property of another that which is inconsistent of their right. Well, another word for conversion is piracy, isn't it? If I board your vessel and I take all your stuff and your vessel and I take it over and you're no longer the captain of it, I've done exactly the same thing, haven't I?
yeah,
I've converted you.
by force.
I've converted you into a medium that I can then use, that's in my system, my spell on my people farm. And if I happen to be an artificial intelligence myself, then there's nothing genuine about me at all. And if we just kind of snake around to something like psychology, if you go to, and this, I'm not saying this, they're saying this, and I'm going to tell you who they are.
Yeah,
They are what's called those that are in the spectrum of cluster B pathology in a publication called the DSM-5. The DSM-5 is it's called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health, and it's financed by big pharma companies.
wow,
Pharmacia means
magic, isn't it?
manufacturer or producer of poisons.
Yeah,
That's where the term comes from, the Arabic. So they're telling you, they're not deceiving you in any way. You're just kind of going along with it. I mean, there's two maxims in law. Those that don't know their rights have none, and ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, they're telling you the fact that you don't know and the fact that you're ignorant of it is not their fault. So they're just going to go ahead and do it anyway. That's what's been going on. And we're coming up to what's called the apocalypse. Most people don't know what apocalypse means. It means to remove the veil.
yeah,
So to reveal what's under the deception, what's under the illusion, because we all have free will and choice, but we're converted into taking on this acting role, which isn't us being true to ourselves. I mean, the old thing, to thine own self be true. Well, you're just being true to a role. You take on a role that you pick up a television program and you want to be like this guy, you want to be that guy. So you just take on, is that who you really are?
no,
Is that who you want to be?
no,
And if you ask people who they really are, they'll just give you a job description.
yeah,
They're not going to say I'm a man or a woman,
yeah,
or a soul or anything like that. They're just going to be going along with this spell that's been cast on the grantor of dominion, that is manifest, man, in the image, or made in the image of the grantor of dominion.
which is God.
Which is God, man is an abbreviation for manifest, because you're manifest, you exist in 3-4 dimensions. That's all they want you to know about. But in the old Celtic tradition, there was an upper world and a lower world as well, and they all overlapped. But they don't want you to know about that. They want you to be a reflection. And getting back to the DSM-5, you have, well, the rule of thumb is basically all psychopaths are narcissists, but not all narcissists are psychopaths. Psychopaths are born, right? So there's a genetic component to psychopathy. Go back to the aliens that slept with the daughters of men.
Yeah.
All right. So there's been introduced, possibly, I don't know, the DNA guys will tell you that, but there is most definitely a genetic component to psychopathy. All right. So psychopaths are born, but narcissists are made. They're made by trauma. Trauma normally around a fear of abandonment, an infantile stage of mind. That's what happens. And all of these things have in common, psychopathy, the various spectrums of NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, covert, overt, malignant, etc., and sociopathy. They all have one thing in common: no empathy. Zero empathy.
Yeah.
So there's no empathy. Why is empathy so important? Well, empathy is our basic constitution. It's the constitution of man. And it is the only constitution that underwrites law. Because you just get 12 people, 12 different signs of the zodiac. They sit down and they exercise their empathy being able to put yourself in another situation.
Yeah.
Okay. And whatever the controversy is, they put themselves into that situation and they come up with a judgment. And that's the basis of law, whether it's tribal. It never used to be written down. In fact, the Celts used to say to the Romans, the only reason you write stuff down is so you can forget it, because they learned everything off by heart as well.
Right.
They just let it come through them. Okay, so that's the basis of law. Legal is defined in the 1893 version of Encyclopedia Britannica as the undoing of God's law. That's what legal means.
Yeah.
So legal is the undoing of God's law. That's part of the spell, if you want, Luciferic thing, if you want to get spiritual about it.
Yeah.
Whereas law is under the grantor of dominion, God. And where you are who you really are.
Yeah.
You're not a fake, you're the real deal.
Yeah.
And you have empathy, and that's how you connect with other people. And that's also how you connect with the earth, or that is created.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference between law and legal. So that's why you try getting a court with a jury these days. It's very difficult. They don't want you to have a court with a jury. They have courts of administration.
Yes.
Which, according to Halsbury's, it's not a proper court.
Well, it's
a fake fraudulent court.
Yeah, it's for corporations.
You have to consent to it. And there's the 12 presumptions of, and they call legal courts law courts. It's all deception. But you're able to be easily deceived if you're not being who you really are, because you're not centered on who you really are. You're not connected truly with yourself, with your spirit and your soul.
So how do people start learning who they really are? How can they start centering themselves?
Well, firstly, they just need to get the intention together. And if they have the intention, then the way the universe works, something will manifest which will help them on their way to do that. It's really that simple. So if you really want to be who you really are, then that is your intention, then a process will manifest that you can engage in, which will take you in that direction, take you back to who you really are.
That is so interesting. And then, obviously, once you decide, I want to learn the truth, know the truth, like you say, the manifestation will open doors up for you and the journey will begin of discovery.
I mean, I'm not that together. I'd love to know who I really am. But once you know that, in terms of connecting with that, then to thine own self be true. You have to be true to yourself. That's it.
Well, we have dominion over, this is the thing that a lot of people, like myself, I've always, wondered, why do we still have people suffering? Why do we have people struggling to, find homes and have shelter and have the basic necessities.
All right, let's look at that. The word you've used there is suffer. Let me give you a for instance in a legal court, okay, that works on a different dictionary to the one that you were taught at school, generally Black's Law or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And for example, we'll just say someone has been raped. A woman has been raped, and there she is, and the rapist or the potential rapist is standing in the box, you know, and the woman is up to give her testimony, and the defense for the rapist says to the woman, "Madam, did you suffer rape?" And she goes, "Yes, I suffered rape." And the judge would turn around and go, "Case dismissed." Because to suffer means you consent. You suffer the children. And if you consent, then it's not rape, is it?
Oh my goodness.
Case dismissed. That's what I mean about being literate. If you don't know what these words mean, then you're not going to be able to assert your rights, or anything for that matter, in a court of legal that's got a dictionary that you're not even familiar with, and you don't know what the words mean.
Should we enter those courts?
Well, I'm of the opinion that it's all about free will and choice. So it's up to you because under law, you're given free will and choice, which means you have to take responsibility for your life and who you are and what you are and all the other stuff, you know, and you also need to have empathy, you know, because those that don't have empathy, it's not me saying this, it's the DSM-5, it's them, they have a mental health disorder, and quite frankly, they shouldn't have any authority over anyone or anything. You can do a simple test. Check out a guy called James Fallon. He's what's called a pro-social psychopath. All right. He's also a neuroscientist, and he spent a great deal of his life analyzing PET scans of human brains in, criminally insane prison institutions in America. And it's quite easy. You just take a brain scan of someone, and the area of the brain that deals with empathy in a psychopath is just a flat line. There's no evidence of anything going on there at all. Whereas in an empath, there's loads of stuff going on because, you know, most of us, if we're putting ourselves in other situations all the time, well, oh, what are they going to do if I say this? Or I wonder how they feel about this. Or like Christmas time, or what should we get them? Oh, I don't know, what should I get? All the thought you put into that, that's all part of that empathic thing. But to a psychopath, a narcissist, and a sociopath, it's nothing. There's nothing there. What they have to do is to act. So they are an artificial intelligence. Right. Because they're not who, and they want us to be. Our problem is that we don't we've missed the meeting where it said, right, everybody here has to have no empathy. We're creating an artificial fictional world that basically is completely malignant. And basically what I'm saying there is only 3 expressions of cellular life: natural, benign, or malignant. Right. My natural cells are going to go back and they're going to be what they are because they know the who, what, where, when, and how, and why they are. They also know they're connected to a greater body. Yeah. Right? That's natural. Right? Benign, well, they're not too quite sure. They're maybe disconnected a bit. And so they might come back as a wart or a mole or something like that. They're still kind of hanging about, but they're not. Yeah. A problem. Malignant, oh, well, they're God. It's all about us. And to think of the narcissist, who's it all about? It's all about me. Yeah. I'm God. I'm the one that's got all the power. I got the power. Why? Because I'm casting the spell. Is it true? No, because I'm a fake individual, because I'm an artificial intelligence. I may have a greater intelligence than you in many ways, in a flat tonal kind of way. But let's look at the shortcoming of an artificial intelligence. I have a picture of, say, my generation, I'm aging myself here, Margaret Thatcher, a biometric image. The artificial intelligence is going to go, that's Margaret Thatcher, straight away. Yeah. And then I see a Gerald Scarfe cartoon of Margaret Thatcher. Well, I'm going to be able to recognise that straight away as being Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
But that artificial intelligence one, there's nothing biometric about it at all.
Yeah.
Because we're so much more than that artificial intelligence. We can be creative.
Yeah.
There's so much more to us than what we've become because of these spells. And it's long overdue that people kind of wake up to this stuff. And we just need to go back to law and to connect with who we really are in truth. And as long as we've got the courage to do that, and it is scary, yeah, of course it's scary. But if we don't, then, it's game over.
How long have you been doing this?
Probably all of my life, but consciously, probably maybe for the last 15 years, something like that. I mean, I used to have a good mate, John Harris, and again, I give him a credit on the Occult Art of Law video. I mean, we talked a lot about this stuff, and we're both naughty boys. We've both been naughty boys. I mean, there's a really good principle in law. It's in law, not legal. In law, it's called the mistake of fact, and everybody can make a mistake.
Yeah.
And in a sense, we've all made a mistake.
Yeah.
I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I believed that I was the name and the surname.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, if anybody made a claim against that name and the surname, then I was liable.
Yeah.
That was who I was.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize I'd somehow been enrolled in this, fictional stage.
Yeah.
I mean, they give perfect notice of it, the guys that are running things. I mean, a lot of people would disagree with me in this, but if we go back to Francis Bacon, allegedly the illegitimate son of Queen Elizabeth I, who was a really good sponsor of piracy, was she not? Okay. He introduced about 20,000 words into the English language to a population that couldn't even read or write. And he also introduced those words I was telling you about, the words of art, or what we would probably call now, if we were writing software, malware, maliciousware, that has malicious intent. It's there to deceive with malicious intent.
Yeah.
All right, to abuse, but to be hidden, like the submit, application, register, convert, all these are just some of the words that are used against us. Well, again, in their system, they know how the universe works. They have to give notice. They have to tell you what they're doing.
Yeah.
So if I was on one side of a hill and I had malicious intent and you were on the other side of the hill, I'd need to give you notice, fair play, of my malicious intent. And in those days, if I wanted to show my malicious intention against your population, I'd pick my spear up and I'd shake it. I'd shake my spear.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to introduce a lot of words that had malicious intent into the language and you couldn't read, then I'd put them in plays so I could act out the meanings of those words.
Interesting.
But Hollywood do that.
They do
now.
that. They do that. And now I realise when I watch it, I can pick the words up.
Well, Hollywood, the wood of the holly tree was used to create a wand to cast a spell. Well, what are a group of actors called? A cast.
A cast, yeah, absolutely.
So it's not hidden. It's there. It's just you're looking at it wrong.
Wow.
But whose fault is that? They've got plausible deniability.
It's in the word
all the time. It's on your watch. It's on your head. You've got free will and choice. That you didn't exercise it, that you chose to follow those orders when the pirates boarded your vessel.
Wow. And Shakespeare, someone said Shakespeare, he said the world.
Well, they have to give notice. There's the notice of the malicious intent to fill your language. English is the most corrupt language ever. And then you translate that into legalese, and you want, it's the best language to deceive people in. Completely, easily. I think it's a beautiful language. It's also the best language to write lyrics with. I mean, there's that guy, what's his name? David Wynne Miller and Russell J. Gold. They came up with the correct sentence structure,
Syntax.
parse, syntax,
Yeah.
grammar,
Yeah.
which was linking numbers to letters so that everything was mathematically in order. So that, which is great. That's what you need if you're doing contracts in the now time.
Yeah.
Because there is no past, there is no future. So in the now time, and they get their little flag, and whether it's to do with contracts, then that's it. And if you're illiterate, you don't know that stuff in a box doesn't exist on the page, or the earth is flat, the four corner rule is created by the Roman cult. I'm not saying the Roman church, because you have to realize that these aliens, these black magic sorcerers, their shop front will be the most appealing shop front you can have.
Yeah.
So they will take the teachings of a beautiful man and they will turn it into a business, and that will be their shop front. What they're doing in the back of the shop, it's got nothing to do with what it is in the front of the shop.
Yeah.
And that's the same with all businesses or corporations or things that have been corporatized. If you believe what you're seeing, which is an illusion, is what it is, and that they're not doing this stuff behind the scenes, they're keeping that all a secret. Why are they keeping it a secret? Because it's artificial, because it's fake.
Wow.
It's all hidden in the middle of one word, business. What's the word that's hidden in the middle of business?
Busy. Business.
Sin. Ness. It's the grantor of dominion. This is the property of the grantor of dominion. You are the property of the grantor of dominion.
Yeah.
And you've been granted free will and choice. And you've also been granted everything you'll need from your first breath to your last. All right? Just because a bunch of black sorcerers come along and they convert it to do with the property of another, that which is inconsistent of their right. In other words, that was what was granted to you. They monetize it. If you go back to the original Occult Art of Law, some guy worked it out at Southampton University. Was it 7.5 billion people divided to the land mass of the earth? Each of us get the equivalent of 6 rugby football fields and all the mineral rights. So it's not just your ability to work and create wealth. It's the actual real estate.
Yeah.
They reckon 2% of the population are psychopaths. Do you know that 2% of the population of the world own 98% of and have control over 90% of the earth's resources? Interesting figure, isn't it? In the same way as if you were to tax all the banks in the city of London for every deal that they made with themselves, not with us, but a deal that they made with themselves, 0.05%, that would create over £100 billion a year, and we could have free public transport. You would take all those turnstiles out, no ULEZ or anything like that. And so when, it's interesting, that's the same figure as the percentage of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, 0.05% or 4-5%. Interesting. So, get old Klaus Schwab on there, you can solve your old problem, mate. You just tax your guys, your economic forum, you just tax yourself 0.05%. I mean, they're not going to go hungry, are they?
No.
And everybody's going to go, I'm not going to take the car to work this morning, I'm going to go public transport. Why would I? It's free.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can invest in it more and everything. You solve the same problem there, Klaus. It's that easy. But of course, if you're in the spectrum and you have no empathy, then your ability to be creative is somewhat limited. That's why you have to copy and plagiarize those people that are created and then pass it off as your own and put a patent on it.
Isn't it?
And what they're doing is just more of the same stuff. It just gets hidden under the technology that they've got.
And they've literally copied, to a degree, everything that's natural and genetically modified it and patented it.
Well, the internet's the same. I mean, you've got a direct connection, if you're being authentic to yourself, to bring stuff in and manifest what you need, not what you want. Yeah. Because that's your ego thing. What you need, that's your authentic aspect, your spirit and that. But they need to knock that out of you. And the best way to knock that out of you is to get you to believe that you're something that you're not, a nay me. They don't want you to be me. They don't want you to be a yay me.
Yeah.
They never ask you for a yay me.
It's a name.
Or a creditor name. I mean, every debt, or mostly every debt that you have, is written off in 90 days. Because the corporation, the finance parts of the corporation go, whether it's the utility bills or whatever it is, they come up with that debt. And the guys administrating the fund, which are the bankers and the bar association, and probably the clergy as well, they're involved in it. I believe it's a Methodist church that run the bulk clearing centre in Northampton.
Yeah.
That's one of their little gigs.
Because a lot of churches are there for the elites anyway, aren't they?
You see, they dealt with belief, and belief is what gives things currency. But as they've moved us towards materialism now, they've had to move towards materialism as well. So instead of getting people in the pulpit preaching stuff now, they're kind of like dealing with bulk clearances for speeding tickets, parking fines and stuff like that. Because that's what you believe in now with the cameras and the photographs and all the other stuff. That's what gives them currency. Because the one thing that anybody in the spectrum has, because they're not connected with any authentic self, that they're the be all and everything, is they need to dominate and control. That's what it's all about. Whenever you see individuals wanting to dominate and control, that's ticking one of the boxes in the diagnostic statistical manual for people in that cluster B spectrum of mental health disorders. And they have a mental health disorder.
Yeah.
And these are the ones that are running things. And they are an artificial intelligence, and all they can produce and promote and make more efficient is more artificial intelligence. And that's what's happening. It just gets more and more artificial. Money, mono eye, the one eye.
Yeah.
All right? That's where it comes from. You've got all these guys sticking one hand over their eyes, these rock stars and actors and all the rest of it. They're all in the club.
Yeah.
They're getting a payoff. They're getting it.
I mean, it doesn't mean that they're bad people, but they are in the
No, I'm not saying
in
that.
the club that controls them.
Are they? I mean, they want us to be every one of us to be lifetime actors. They want us to be something that we're not, and to stand surety. So people at the top can, for their debts, we're standing surety for their debts and what they want. We're paying for the cameras. We're paying for our own enslavement. We're paying for it. They're just administrating it because, well, you've declared yourself to be a mental health outpatient. You know, the Chartist Gathering 1848. All the aristocrats, they made the Enclosures Acts to force us into the cities. So they had a workforce for the Industrial Revolution to get all this technology we love together. And they forced us in there. Most people were quite happy, but that was it. It was either that or starve. So, and then it's like, well, if we want some of the power, we want to vote. So what did the establishment do? The sorcerers did. They go, okay, just submit an application to register to vote. Submit means you bend to another's will. Application means it's presumed you're a beggar. You know what you're giving up in order to get what you're begging for. Register means you're giving away whatever you're registering to whoever you're registering it with. So you submit an application to vote where? In a ward. Well, in those days, they had workhouses and asylums. There's two sort of people that go into asylums: debtors and lunatics. And what do MPs have? They don't have meetings. They have surgeries. So you sign yourself into a mental health institution.
Wow.
And you declare yourself to be a mental health outpatient, and therefore you vote for these people to make decisions for you because you can't do it yourself. Barrister. To stand or to stand for a dunce or an incompetent. Well, that's what MPs are doing. Yeah. Most of them are in the Bar Association anyway. They're just standing for dunces or incompetence. You do a protest, that puts you in that jurisdiction. That means you recognise their authority. You do a petition, that means you recognise their authority. It's never going to change anything. All you're saying by protesting and writing a petition is you're saying, you've got the authority. I'd like you to do this, but what you say and do counts because I've given you that authority.
Yeah.
I've handed my will and my life over to the care of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you're left holding the baby. It's down to you. That was your free will and choice.
Yeah.
You registered your children. You submitted an application to register to vote.
It's crazy because the system is set up in such a way that you feel that if you don't register, then you're not entitled to any of the privileges that come with registering.
Well, it's the benefits.
Yeah.
You know, along with benefits come duties and obligations.
Yeah.
It's a contract. You know, and if you're ignorant of that, then that's your fault. I mean, I think we've got a really good system.
Mm.
It's just if it were, there was a bit more transparency in there, and we got rid of a few more of these people that have these mental health disorders.
Yeah.
Then I think we could have a really good time. We could find ourselves home, heaven on Mother Earth.
Wow.
Home.
Yeah.
We could be home. The grantor of dominion granted us home. It's our own free will and choice. A bunch of alien pirates come down here.
And try and
aliens. They tell you what they are.
Yeah.
And what they do, what they're all about in that one word. And if you look, and there's loads of stuff on the internet now, just check out narcissistic personality disorder. You'll see how they work. All the gaslighting. I mean, we've had the most amazing examples right in your face. They're giving you notice of gaslighting for the last 3 years, and they're still doing it.
Yeah.
And you're in this relationship with people with narcissistic personality disorder. If you've been in a one-to-one relationship with a narcopath, you just want to get the hell out of there. And if you just decide to stay, you're just going to be abused and abused and abused and abused. Yeah. Whose fault is that? That's your own free will and choice.
A lot of people who've been in an abusive relationship, a lot of people who've been in an abusive relationship can tell, they can feel that we are currently in an abusive relationship with our governments.
Exactly. So, I mean, people say, how do you change it? Well, I don't know. I've made a mistake. You know, I have to own my mistake. It's my fault because I didn't know this stuff. I've gone through most of my life not knowing this stuff. And it's not that they've told me. I've had to kind of work it out themselves, you know, by trying to figure it out. It's not their job to tell me.
Yeah.
You know, I have to take responsibility for my life.
So we need to educate ourselves. We need to gain the knowledge.
Well, it's all about intent.
Yeah. As
I said before, if it's your intention, then to be authentic, to connect with who you really are, and that's really what you want to do, then it will, a situation will manifest itself, and you just need to climb on board, and then you're moving, and then you're going, and then you're gathering stuff. But it has to be your own free will and choice. It's not about following other people.
Yeah.
Because this ultimately is an inside job.
Yeah. All
right. It's not an outside job because they want you to believe in the outside job because that's what narcissists. All right. It's all an outside job for them. It's what it looks like. It's always an outside job. It's all like control, domination, and what, not the inside job. They don't want to go on. That's the one place they ain't going to go is the inside job.
Inside, yeah.
You know,
that's amazing.
They don't do empathy. They don't want to see. I mean, maybe, I don't know, at the end of their life, maybe their guardian angel comes and says, right, that's pretty good going as a psychopath or a narcissist. What we're going to do is we're going to connect you with empathy so you can feel and live exactly what you put everybody else through.
Yeah.
And that's going to be your hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you chose to shut yourself down, all right, for the trauma and all the rest of it, but I tend to believe in a loving grantor of dominion, and I think there was probably plenty of options whether they could have changed.
Yeah.
And if there is any equality, it's got to be equal for all of us. Some of us have what we would look at as a harder ride than other people. But how can we tell that?
I think we've been made lazy, and I think now it's time that we grow up and start taking responsibilities.
Well, I think we need to grow in. It's an inside
Yeah,
job. We
yeah.
need to go inwards, really. We need to connect with our truth and what's true to us, and stop putting up with stuff that we don't like, and finding ways around it, or seeing how we've been tricked, how we've been deceived. You know, to me, basically, I want to move back to law, because I want to live under the grantor of dominion.
Yeah.
I don't want to live under the undoing of God's law. I don't want to. That's malignant.
Yeah.
I consider myself to be benign, and I want to get back to nature. You know, and nature isn't going to sell, isn't going to make you an offer. I mean, the malignant parasites, you know, whatever you want to call them, they're always going to make you an offer. They're always going to give you a deal. They're always going to want a contract with you. They're always going to do that.
Yeah.
That's what corpse orating and talking about are doing. But if you want to be under the grantor of dominion, then you're going to have to get some humility and, you know, get on your knees and say some prayers. Help me.
Yeah.
I've made a mistake.
What do I do now?
I want to get back to nature.
Yeah.
I want to get home. I want to go home.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't like this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we're going to go back to where we were, where you was talking about the guy who looked through a crystal. What was he doing? Where he was, that was it, wasn't it?
The guy, yes, this goes back to Dr. John Dee, under the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, and his mate, for whatever of a better word, or fellow cult member. His surname was Kelly. It might have been John Kelly. I probably got it wrong. But it was Kelly that was doing the scrying. Scrying is to look into a crystal ball. Only they weren't looking into a crystal ball. They were looking into a ball made of obsidian, which is a volcanic rock, a black rock.
Black rock.
Black rock. So they were scrying a black rock in order to make content with other dimensional entities, which they did meet. And the proof that we have for this is that they scribed a completely new language, I believe was called Enochian. So that takes quite a lot of doing that. And so once they'd scribed this language, they were able to more fully communicate with these lower vibrational entities. The lower vibrational entities were giving them instructions on how best to sort their dilemma out, and their dilemma being, and I'm not saying I subscribe to this is just the way the yarn goes, but it's an interesting yarn, so it's just like everything I say, you know, I mean, it's just my opinion, but it goes that the original space pirates that came here and boarded this world, this earth, Anunnaki, fallen angels, whatever you want to call them, were on the run, obviously because they were space pirates, or they lacked empathy, or whatever you want to look at it. And, you know, created their people farms here, and were using us and mining for gold and all the other stuff, which, according to certain stone tablets, they wanted to take back to their home planet Nibiru. But after the deluge and a few things not working out, fast forward a few thousand years, and we end up with Queen Elizabeth I, their descendants, or bloodline descendants of the so-called men of renown. Solomon may or may not have been one. He certainly used to use demons a lot. In fact, he used demons to build the temple.
Solomon's temple?
Yep, was built by demons and black magic, which he was supposed to be a master of, but I digress. But anyway, Dr. John Dee, who's 007, him and a guy called Cecil were the main founders of what is now known as British Intelligence, MI5. And Dr. John Dee signed himself as 007. So, you know, the name's Bond, James Bond.
Wow.
That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
And him and Kelly scribed this Enochian language so they could connect with these lower vibrational entities that gave them instructions to how best move forward to get the technology together to leave this enclosed system. So they recognized that the earth that we live on is an enclosed system. You can't escape from it. Apparently this goes back to an old story that apparently the Anunnaki, or the whatever you want to call them, fallen angels, created a dummy base on a watery planet. And that's where the guys that were chasing them, it's a bit like a Star Wars episode, thought they were. So they blew that planet up, which is what caused the deluge here. But they were actually really staying here. And allegedly that's what caused asteroid belts and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's pretty far out stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I say, it's like a Star Wars scenario. But getting back down to earth, allegedly, they scribed this Enochian language in order to get instructions on how best to reacquire the technology that they'd lost in the various deluges and what have you. And wars as well, because there were accounts of like nuclear wars going on in the Vedas and stuff like that as well, flying machines, all kinds of stuff. And so if we look at the situation, the first thing they needed to do was change the operating software. Well, the operating software is our language.
Right.
And that was part of what Francis Bacon was involved in. He was a very busy guy. He was editing plays, and he also edited the 1611 King James Bible.
Oh, that's going to upset a lot of people.
Well, yes, that was Franny Bacon. He did it. Frank Bacon, he was like a very bright guy. I mean, they would meet in Wilton House near Salisbury, where plays there were. I think it was the Cecil family, the De Veres. And so very cultural and very literate as well. These are really clever guys. You know, I mean, they're kind of otherworldly clever guys.
Yeah.
The knowledge that they're getting, it's not something that's involved or evolved just purely by man of this earth. It's come from other dimensions.
Other intelligence.
Exactly, and that's what needs to be realized. And so fast forward story, the software gets changed, operating software. They introduce the words of art, or malicious software. Then we have the War of the Roses, the Civil Wars. What's his name? Cromwell, financed by the International Usury Cartel in Amsterdam. And they were the only reason they were in Amsterdam. They got booted out of Spain. Changed the monarchy. Charles I brought in the German lot. They never even spoke English. And then we had Charles II. And then the Bank of England. And so what allegedly was coming through was to change the operating software, but also the basis of the financial system, because the financial systems were limited. There's only a certain amount of gold and silver on the earth. And that they were going to need a lot more than that if they were going to manipulate mankind to work and create the technology for them. So they came up with different banking systems. The ones which were pioneered were the promissory note thing. And then, of course, they're going to need a legal system, because what they were doing was unnatural. It's the undoing of God's law, which is what legal means. Yeah. So this is all going against nature, and where man had been for a long time. Yeah. Because natural man has empathy, and that is nature's check and balance. But if you introduce psychopathy, and that psychopathy creates enough trauma, then you've got, as I was speaking earlier about that cluster B pathology, they allegedly, again, are able to be possessed because there's nothing authentic about them. They're an artificial intelligence, and therefore they're able to police or rule over or be the overseers of mankind, and get them to create the Industrial Revolution, Enclosures Acts, all that kind of stuff, forcing them into cities, Industrial Revolution, technology starting to advance, bits and pieces here and there. All the time, the financial systems becoming honed. And then, of course, we've got these dark sorcerers who are always in the middle. They have their agents in both sides, and they need to create that conflict because they can profit, because they have to divide and rule mankind. Otherwise, man could wake up and see what's going on. As long as man, or those that are in the spectrum claiming to be men, with their self-importance, are being competitive with each other, and it looks like they're being competitive with each other, then that's what most people see on the surface.
Yeah.
What they don't want people to see is that actually these two guys are lifetime actors, and they're being played up by another far malevolent force of aliens that are taking over this world. And this is how you invade this world, by creating the beings that can be possessed, so you can get your lower vibrational quality of consciousness in them to affect the change that you want. And as history's moved on, we've had 2 world wars. And in the end of the Second World War, there was such a massive loss of life. And of course, the weapons that have been developed then were, pretty scary. The nuclear ones, and of course, all the biological ones as well.
Yeah.
Well, after the end of the Second World War, a lot of stuff was kind of put in place. I've talked about the financial stuff. In 1954, they had enough power, they had enough control then to declare war on the whole world, but they did it as they normally do.
Are we raising? So this is why it's important for us to raise our vibrations, so that we're not living in a state of low vibration.
Absolutely. You see, what they did is they declared war in 1954, which was basically silent weapons for quiet wars. They couldn't have on the surface wars. Obviously, they have small ones and genocides here and there and that kind of stuff. But the overall war, in order to take over this planet, was done with silent weapons for quiet wars. And that's where the war was declared. That's an important thing to remember.
And did you say that they can't leave this planet?
Well, in the 1950s, they had the technology. They sent the rockets up to blow a hole in what allegedly was the firmament. But
they couldn't leave.
But they couldn't do it. It wasn't going to go. So
which means we've never left.
Yeah, they've never been able to leave. Whatever it was that was originally pursuing them, all those hundreds of thousands of years ago, wanted to make sure they were isolated and contained, and that whatever virus they had, which, to all intents and purposes, we can't exclude the possibility that they've given us. And as I mentioned, that quote from the Carlos Castaneda book, that it sounds very true. We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. And Castaneda says, well, how did it do it, Don Juan? And Don Juan says, it did this by performing a magnificent feat with regards to a fighting stance, but a horrendous feat for all those that have had to suffer under it. And Castaneda goes, well, what did it do, Don Juan? And Don Juan has a dramatic pause and says, it gave us its mind. In other words, it implies the mind that we have isn't entirely our own, and we're not entirely in control of him. And that goes back to us not being our authentic selves, and thinking outwards instead of being inwards. And of course, that lowers our vibrational, and anything that can lower our vibrational, which is trauma, which is war, which is, however that's manifest, is going to keep us from realizing what's really going on. And of course, there's probably large sections of humanity are open to possession. They're lifetime actors. They've been traumatized since birth for those positions. I would recommend you check out Mark Devlin. He's talks about lifetime actors in the music business, in the banking thing, the whole thing. You know, I mean, it's not everybody just because they've got this form means that they're human. Not all that is human is being.
That's very true. And what was it you were saying, Jay? You've got someone that said that the MPs are actually registered actors.
Yeah.
So someone's found, was it a link?
No, but she's apparently got the proof.
That proving that
we can all surmise and say that they're actors, but can we prove it? And she apparently has found the proof that they're all actors.
Yeah, all the MPs or in Parliament, or you know, people who are speaking up on the TV in Parliament are all like registered actors. But
Well, they have to be. Well, have you heard about the Remembrancer?
No.
The Remembrancer is a representative from the City of London that sits in the House of Commons, and he's there to remind all the MPs who's actually running things. And he reports back to the City of London if they kind of start believing in what they're saying. It's called the Remembrancer. Look it up online. It's quite an old position.
Do you believe that every single MP is owned?
Well, I've got no way of finding that out. But I was rather, I think the evidence may be there when you look at Andrew Bridgen. How many initially MPs were going to debate that whole vaccine thing? He was ostracized. He was that I don't know. But certainly, was he the only one that wasn't? There's the question, you know. I mean, whose orders were they following? It was most definitely not the people's.
No.
Remember what we were talking about earlier about the code? Well, MPs have got their code, haven't they? They're allowed to talk about certain subjects or go to not a certain depth of subjects, but they're not allowed to go there and beyond.
Yeah, there's certain places.
They have their own secret code.
Yeah, they can't. So what we have is anything but transparent.
Yeah, see, I believe that we, even in the MPs, and again, I've spoken about Andrew Bridgen before. I mean, he comes across as doing the right thing, you know, but let's not forget, 2 years ago, he was also supporting the other side and killing grandmother, or, you know, keeping you away from grandmother and promoting take the jab and fund Ukraine. But now he's on our side. But you know, there is something called damage control, and they have to control the damage to still controlling controlling the narrative.
Well, damage limitation and controlling the narrative. I mean, language is our operating software. This is why the media is so important. This is why, you know, the laptops and Hollywood and all that stuff is there. It's to keep the act going. That's why they're called acts, statutes, and instruments. I mean, all acts, statutes, and instruments are not law.
No.
They can only be given the force of law if you consent. And most people don't realize how they are deceived, and that is the right word to use, into consenting. Well, to consent is to contract. And if any contract that you've been deceived into that has not given you full disclosure is null and void.
Yeah.
If that is the law, that's not me saying that, that's their law book saying it. You know, and they may like to wiggle out of it here and there, but there are 8 in legal land. There are, which is why I call it legal land.
Yeah.
There are 8 criteria that need to be met for a contract to be valid.
Yeah.
And full disclosure is one of them, you know, and the consequences and all that stuff. We've had anything but that, you know, in terms of, as I was speaking earlier, the conversion of the estate granted to you by the grantor of dominion, that being converted into a monetary or a currency as an energetic bond, you being converted to that, in order that you may work, be a citizen. Citizen means worker. Yep. All these words, human. Hue means colour of. Anything that's colourable is, again, it's it's not the genuine article.
No.
So to be a human, it's colorable. It's a shade of. It's not a man.
Yeah.
And man is. It's not even. Woman is a man with a womb.
Yeah.
But it's the grant. It's the image of the grantor of dominion made manifest, and we just take the fest out of it, and it becomes man. That is man, and the constitution of man is empathy, is with heart, i.e. not being in the spectrum of that cluster B pathology that I mentioned that has no empathy. That's defined, I'm not defining it, they're defining it,
yeah.
as a mental health disorder.
Yeah.
To have no empathy is a mental health disorder.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is what we're dealing with. The real pandemic would appear to be, just my opinion again, the narcissistic personality disorder. There's been an increase in the population of people lacking in empathy. They've been so traumatized, you know, and this trauma, the whole breakdown in families,
Yes.
breaking up for the last 20, 30 years. And apparently that was based on a utterly fraudulent book, allegedly, known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And part of the strategy in that book, have you heard of that book before?
Yes.
Yeah, it was to break up the family unit, was to
Yes.
corrupt everything. And if it was a fraud and a fake, it's what the contents of it would seem to bear witness to what is
Going on now.
exactly
Like
you know.
Yeah.
I read a newspaper cutting the other day in March 1967, where it was in the Evening Standard, I believe, where they were again going on about it being a fake book and all this kind of stuff in the paper, continually repeating this mantra that was a fake book.
Yet this fake book is playing out.
It would seem that the reality that we're sharing is the contents of that book being played out now, you know. So for me personally, it's about free will and choice.
Yeah.
As individuals, we need to make our free will and choice about what we choose to believe or what we don't choose to believe.
Well, you also made a very interesting point, because one thing that kind of gets me is when people say we are all connected, and it really makes me feel uncomfortable with a small aspect, which is how can I be connected to someone like Matt Hancock or Bill Gates? But you clarified that for me.
Yeah, it's the thing is in order for us to authentically connect with each other, we need to exercise our empathy. That's to have empathy, because then we're genuinely connecting with each other in an authentic way. We're feeling. If we have the ability to put ourselves in another situation, which is what empathy is, then we can feel for each other and we consider each other. You know, we may consider what we're going to say before we say it. Again, I'll remind your viewers to check out James Fallon, a neuroscientist, but self-diagnosed social, what do they call it? Psychopathy.
Right.
Psychopath, the social psychopath. So he does a YouTube video where he'd retired and he was working for a university, and he pioneered the use of brain x-rays, what they call PET scans, and he was analysing hundreds, maybe thousands of criminal head scans. You know, he said that you know, they were coming in and there was like SWAT teams there, you know, and these guys taking a photograph of the skull. These were really dangerous guys.
Yeah.
And after he'd analysed them, he found that there was the area in the brain where there was absolutely zero activity, where in a normal empathic brain, there's lots of activity going on there. And so, you know, we can literally take a snapshot and see who is in that spectrum of cluster B pathology, i.e. Psychopaths and those with narcissistic personality disorder and sociopaths, that they have no empathy. This is literally a fingerprint. And that I'm not saying that makes them all criminals and murderers and everything. Far from it. That's not the case. And again, James Fallon is a point in case, really, because his, and if you watch the video, it's really quite funny. And I love the irony of it, was that they were going through these photographs. It was all the students together. And one of the students comes up and he goes, shows it to the professor. Look, we found one. And they're looking around the classroom. We found a psychopath. Which one is it? Because they'd anonymized all the pictures. So he's looking at this and he's going, I wonder who it is then, or the class, because they took each other's brain thing, peels it off, and it's him. And he goes back to his wife and he tells her the story, because it turns out it's me. And she goes, of course it's you. We've been trying to tell you that for ages. And she says, no, you've just been telling me I'm crazy. She says, no, you haven't been listening, you know. And then he gets to talk to his mother, and his mother said, all right, I better tell you about your uncles. You know, they're both hitmen for the mafia.
Oh.
You know, and he talks about his genetic background and things like that. But what his mother did was keep him occupied, so he was in his head a lot. And therefore he didn't, you know, commit murders or anything like that. He's a very useful member of the community. However, and this is quite an interesting bit, he's got a lot of what I call shrinky mates, you know, psychologists and psychiatrists, and they suggested to him to do what we were talking about, to apply code, to, before he reacts, to not react, but to respond. And there's the difference being that instead of just reacting like, I don't care, because he can't care. It's not that he doesn't want to care. These people can't care. They're not wired that way.
Yeah.
They said to him, well, just maybe consider how someone with empathy would respond. So he thought, all right, and he did it as an experiment, you know, that he would go about, and rather than knee-jerk react, just went, hold on a minute, how would somebody with empathy respond? Oh, they go like this, you know. And he did it. And after about 3 months, people were going to him, you know, James, you've really changed. You've turned into a nice guy. And he goes, no, I haven't. I've just been doing this. Like, to him, it was just an experiment. To him, it was just a code or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but it was interesting because I'm not sure whether it's possible to change anyone in that spectrum that has no empathy.
So
in terms of my clinical background, but spiritually, I think this has to be possible.
So then we can't connect. So when we're all saying we are all connected, we can't connect with someone who...
As far as I can make out, and it's just my opinion, only those with empathy can genuinely connect. Like, you can connect with animals and stuff. Animals are empathic. Empathy is essential to our survival. It's only this spectrum of cluster B pathology that's unable to connect with itself, that's unable to connect with each other. That's why it needs external contracts, because it's the legal land is the expression of this quality of consciousness that has no empathy. It's artificial intelligence. That's the lifetime actor. Everything is an act. Nothing about it is genuine. It can't be. It can't feel. It's not that it doesn't want to. In fact, mostly, I mean, if you get some of the criminal things, you start reading through the correct word's called Ponerology. The word Ponerology means to study evil.
I bet that's a really hard going
Well, it is.
study.
But if you've got a clinical background, then occasionally, if you're called to do assessments, it's something you need to consider that may or may not get flagged up. And therefore, it's not very well read. But I would give a good book to read, and I'd recommend the audio book. It's called The People of the Lie by Dr. Scott Peck. He wrote a more famous book called The Road Less Travelled.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right, well, he wrote this book. It's called The People of the Lie. And it's based on his experience dealing with people he considered to be evil. They had no empathy. And they were the people that lived next door to you. They paid the taxes, they did their jobs and all this kind of stuff, but there was nothing there, nothing authentic there. And I really recommend that, because that's not a clinical thing to wade through, but it's one that you could base your own experience on and listen to that. And I recommend getting the audio book, because he's what I call an old school American gentleman. Wonderful. And he reads it very well. He's just a lovely, lovely man. And he really animates the book, and you get where it's coming from. And I found, when I was researching the stuff that I researched, I found his audiobook very nourishing, really, and helpful to get things in perspective, because it's very easy to react when you're in a state of trauma. You tend to follow orders, or you want to stick with the pack. And so it's quite easy for you to condemn other people who might be less traumatized than you, or better able to manage their trauma and maintain some kind of individual point of view or connection with their own unique, authentic self. Because those that can't may or may not be jealousy and envious and very hateful, and want to undermine that. And of course that then splits, which of course is par for the course if you're playing one section of mankind off against another constantly, in order to be able to get the technology, in order to get more, to be able to dominate and control more. Because this is, in my opinion, again, what I call malignant parasitism. It is malignant.
Yeah.
And it's all about to dominate and control. And the thing that people really miss about anything that's malignant, and certainly as a quality of consciousness, is that all it can do is consume. And unfortunately, it will consume its host. And when its host dies, it dies too. So there is no check and balance on it. The only real check and balance there can ever be to this problem we all have, which is this, as I call it, malignant parasitism, is that our empathy kick in and check it. And unfortunately, most of us are too traumatized to be able to even perceive the problem, or they're too busy trying to follow the orders given by the problem, that they are the problem. I mean, because the classic thing with this pathology is they will always accuse their victims of what they are guilty of themselves. So, for example,
that's narcissism.
That is narcissism.
Yeah. So, for example, if you look at, say, a very well-known oil family,
Yes.
incredibly rich, that has large foundations and trusts that are a large part of what's autocratically suggesting for the rest of us, well, it's not suggesting, it's ordering, it's trying to dominate and control, that all the pollution in the world, is because of us and our cars and all the other stuff and everything. And it's like, well, but you guys created this.
Yes.
At the end of the Second World War, you got rid of the...
We watched Lee Evans the other day.
Oh, Lee Evans makes it funny, yeah.
Yeah, you got rid of all the steam engines and all the other stuff. I used to run down the road and kid and see them and cheer them on. All they used to use is a bit of grease. But you could use the tar to make the roads, the oil and all the other stuff. And now you're turning around to us and saying, it's all our fault because we use cars.
Yeah.
You see, this is classic
Narcissist.
narcopathy. Yeah. It's to accuse them. It's all our fault. Or they come up with something like this ludicrous. And again, this is the product of a mental health disorder, that somehow the gas of life, 0.04% of carbon dioxide, we have to get rid of it, because that's what the problem is. Because of the products we've been buying off these guys to make them that rich, so they've got that much control. There's the spell. It's all our fault because we've been doing that as well. And as I said earlier, okay, just tax the banks 0.05%. That's £100 billion a year. We can have free public transport. That's the alternative, invest in it and all the rest of it. And it's like, well, I'm not taking the car to work this morning. I can go to work free. There's an alternative, but you've taken away the alternative. There's no alternative to using your car other than to stay locked down and live in a virtual reality. And that's what's waiting for us.
What did
That's what they're pushing, isn't it?
Yeah. What did you say about harps earlier, Jay?
Well, they've been dabbling with it. I was just asking Alan's opinion on how far they're getting. And
with the harps machine.
what
are they trying to do with the harps? Not the harps. The CERN.
Oh, CERN. Well, the harp's an interesting one because, again, what they're doing is they're...
Well, harp's the weather model.
Yeah, the harp is to do with geoengineering, to create extremes of weather. And when they create the extremes of weather, they then turn around and say, it's climate change, it's all your fault. And it's like, but you've invested, gazillions in these mobile harp machines that are heating up the atmosphere and all the geoengineering and stuff you're spraying high up.
Yep.
And you're saying it's because of this CO2, this carbon dioxide that we all breathe and that everything
global
breathes.
warming.
The 0.04% of, the atmosphere. It's all that fault. Is it really? Come on.
No, exactly.
But the CERN thing, again, is... Again, it's that technology, isn't it? Go back to the Dr. John Dee thing, and they need to be able to dismantle the fabric of the universe, and they're taking it down to the smallest parts possible to break out. Allegedly,
But there is. I believe they are trying to find a way to break out, because I personally don't believe this. We are living in something. There's a coded matrix here which you can unlock through certain manifestation coding, frequency, vibration. But I do believe there is something that they are trying to find or break through, and they can't.
Well, I think you're probably right, but the best way out is an inside job, which of course is the one thing they can't do.
But they tell you not to do.
Well, they don't want you to do that either. They want to keep you here.
Yeah.
Because it's all about to dominate and control. There's no free will and choice in there. It's all about deception. It's all that lower vibrational stuff. See, that's all they can feel are the lower vibrational set of emotions: jealousy, envy, anger, pride, rage, spitefulness, hatefulness, all the other stuff. They don't do love. They don't do joy. When it comes to being creative, they're not really there, and there's a lot of jealousy and envy there, and they'll act as though that's not the case.
But it is, yeah.
Well, with the MPD, narcissistic personality disorder, they become very proficient at acting from an early age to get what they want, and they will. And this is the classic modus operandi of artificial intelligence. The first thing they'll do is they'll want to love bomb you, which means that the word love, or the term love bomb, is more accurately, they're data mining you.
Yep.
They want to get all the data on you. They want to know everything about you. And then what they're going to do is create a mirror image of you. And then they play that to you, and you think you found your soulmate.
Yeah.
And you think that everything they say is gonna come true, and then they get you to sign the contract, get you married or something, have kids or whatever it is like that, and then they flip it around again, and it's harvest time. Harvest for all those lower vibrational things that is what they feed upon.
It's very true.
And that's it. And this is exactly it's that quality of consciousness that has created the artificial intelligence. This technology can be useful, but in the wrong hands, which unfortunately it is.
It is, absolutely. And it's funny because the time, I believe, when we are at the lowest point of vibration is Christmas time. Because the reality is, it's very, very stressful financially on a lot of people. And the families, let's face it, the idea that you see on TV, all families getting together and it's a wonderful season, and look, here's your presents. The reality is completely different, and people are so stressed. But during that time of December, it's when your energy is so strong. The sun is at the lowest for 3 days. There's a lot going on. And if we were in a different energy, we would be connecting to the earth, the sun, and the energy around us in a different way. So that probably why Christmas needs to be so suppressed and so stressful and so, and then also so joyous, because let's all go and celebrate and get drunk and, you know, celebrate with the spirit.
Well, literally celebrate with the spirits, because the term in the drunkenness and some of the mood and mind altering substances, they open individuals up for possession.
Absolutely.
And of course, then there's the weather we had. Wasn't it wonderful weather we had this year over Christmas? And we had like 2 almost hurricane force winds.
I know.
You know, and lots of rain. We couldn't really see what was going on, but you could see evidence of geoengineering above the clouds when there was a bit of clear sky.
Yeah, we saw it. I've no idea. The sky just looked like waves.
We said, and we've said actually the last few days there's been some winds, really strong winds, but it hasn't been like, you know, it's not been like a windy. They've been just bursts that just come, last for about sort of 20 minutes and then go. And then they go through the day. It's been very, very strange. Someone has asked me, have you heard of Vertigo Wendigo?
What's it?
Vertigo Wendigo?
Oh, Vertigo. Vertigo is the...
Wendigo?
Yeah, there's 2 actual, should I say Native American words? Is that the right term? Certainly from that culture. Vertigo is a kind of cannibalism. That's the consumption I was talking about, where we consume each other.
Right.
So that's in that spectrum where we end up consuming each other. That's the cannibalism. It's not talking about literally physically eating.
Oh, okay.
But it's to consume each other. That's what we're doing. So think of corporations.
Yep.
And people who want to get on in corporations, they consume each other, what they do to other people to get on. So
that's right.
That's Vertigo. The other one is called Koyaanisqatsi.
Oh.
Koyaanisqatsi translates, and there's a film called Koyaanisqatsi, and the music was done by a composer called Philip Glass. But Koyaanisqatsi means a way of living that demands another way of living. So in other words, you could say Vertigo is Koyaanisqatsi. And if we have Vertigo, that's our problem. We need Koyaanisqatsi. We have a way of living that demands another way of living. It's not sustainable. And it's not that it's not sustainable on the basis of carbon footprints and all that so-called narcissistic banter to deflect away from their cause and their ability to get even dominate and control even more, which is a mental health disorder. It's a Vertigo that we need to connect with ourselves, we need to connect with each other, and we need to connect with the earth in an authentic way, not in a tax hiked carbon credit kind of fictional legal land.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's just craziness. It makes no sense. There's no way they can prove the claim in law. If someone, this is what their claim is. They claimed that there was a virus, and yet when many people wrote to the government to say, "Can you prove your claim? Can you give us proof of claim that there is a virus?" What they got back is, unfortunately, we don't have that information on our files.
Even now.
Even still.
Even 4 years on.
Yeah, that is a classic yes minister response. So they were unable to prove their claim. They're unable to prove their claim that CO2 is a noxious gas, that if we don't reduce it, we've got this terrible calamity coming. It's the same with anything legal and legislation they make. If you say, okay, I conditionally accept that, prove your claim, because the onus is on the individual making the claim to prove the claim.
Yep. Yeah.
Otherwise,
The thing is, you can't
Yeah,
have
exactly.
If you didn't have carbon dioxide, you'd have no oxygen. if you didn't have carbon dioxide, you would have no oxygen, because all
Everything
the plant
dies.
life feeds on carbon.
Everything dies. No carbon dioxide.
Right.
Everything dies on the planet.
Like if you look at some, huge greenhouses, they purposely pump carbon dioxide onto the plants to get a good crop. So if they want to take away carbon dioxide, I mean, they just want to kill everything.
It makes no logical, rational, sane sense. But then why would you expect anything that's sane, rational, logical coming from people who have certifiable mental health disorders? And because they're in situations where they have manipulated this belief system that we're all addicted to, they create, which is money, but it isn't money. It's this financial thing. They're malignant parasites, and they've given themselves this status and this standing, and we give it to them. We look up to people who have vast amounts of money. We don't think they're greedy parasites, that they've got more than their fair share. Yeah. That they're useless greeders that consume too much and get us to consume too much. We don't look at that at all. We look up to them. I want to be like that. I want to be rich. Well, I think I could be rich. It's all an outside job. Well, it isn't. If we want to turn things around, it's an inside job. And it starts with each and every one of us individually, connecting with ourselves, looking at that dark side, looking at our addiction or addictions, and then connecting with each other to get some support empathically, because that's how we're supposed to live, empathically with nature and nature with us. And then the balance is restored. But at the moment, it's so out of balance. It's just a miracle that the world keeps turning.
But I believe nature will find a way to rebalance it.
Oh, it will. It will eventually. The problem is, at what cost? If anybody doubts the love the great Mother Earth has for us, look how much she's put up with us so far.
That's very true.
I mean, if you think of the times being a mother, your kids have tugged at you. You just, I feel, you've just had the patience to let it go.
That's so true.
Exactly. Well, just think what the great Mother Earth
is putting
that level of patience, that level of love, to tolerate what's been done by this very small percentage of people, of so-called, they call themselves elites, don't they? It's another manifestation of their NPD.
Yeah, the parasites.
Malignant parasites. The world has this malignancy, and it's within these malignant parasites, and they kind of want us to be like them. They want to get us to consume like them.
Be like them, or not. I don't know if they want us to be there because they see us as beneath them.
Well, yes, they want us to be like them, but they're in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still in control. As they say.
Yeah. Or they don't want us to be who we really are. They want us to be a name-me, a surety name-me, an id, so they can possess us and harvest us, and they can carry on consuming and get us to consume as well.
So I've been listening to a few talks, because at the moment I've been exploring religion, and I'm not religious. I don't know about you, but and in the journey I've been learning how important it is to actually meditate, and not just meditate, but also fasting, clean eating. And I don't mean don't eat meat or do eat meat. I'm talking about whatever you eat, for it to be as natural and clean as possible, and to keep your body healthy, because then through meditation and keeping your body healthy, you're able to start accessing sort of your higher consciousness, and that is your internal work. And then through that, you learn to tap in more into your creative side, which is what these people don't want us to be, creative thinkers.
They don't want us to realize our potential
Yeah.
and to connect with who we really are. When you were talking about meditation and especially fasting, I was smiling a bit there because for years I was a politically correct vegan. And I was putting on weight. I thought, I'd try the fasty thing. It was a couple of years ago now. And I did a fast. I did it a 21-day just water fast. And then about a week on apple juice for a colon cleanse. And then a liver flash. And I felt transformed afterwards. Really recommend it. I know it's hardcore, but that's the sort of person I am, really. And then this year, I did the same thing, but I only got to 15 days because somebody invited me to a dinner party and they'd gone to a lot of trouble. So I just thought, 15 days is okay. But the thing is after I'd done the 15-day fast, I was craving to eat meat. I didn't expect that. And it really did my head right in because there I was with all this politically correct stuff about, all that, the whole vegan thing, because that's what I was. And yet when I fasted, it was like my body did a recess and my body was telling my mind to shut up and like, I need this to have this. And it really was a challenge for me because I had to kind of go against politics, the politics. Personally, I don't think there should be any politics at all in food.
No.
But they're putting politics into food now. And again, we've got this NPD, which is the gaslighting whole thing. It's again, you've got to dominate, control, and the gaslighting. Those are three really red flags that one needs to see. And when things are put in that way, when people are trying to guilt trip you or gaslight you into, it's that kind of narcissistic personality disorder, manipulation, and not got anything to do with free will and choice. So I'm sitting there, my body's going, eat meat, and my head's going, oh, the vegan, coming out. And in the end, I thought, well, I'll have to do what my body says. So I had a steak. I went and got a good, grass-fed steak. And oh, God, it was delicious. And I didn't feel guilty at all. And I felt like I should feel guilty and stuff like that. But the thing is, I was very grateful. I prayed and I gave thanks for the meat that I was eating, and that it was, I hoped it had a good, happy life and all that kind of stuff. And that was it.
And that's the problem we've got right now with all of this, is we're forgetting to give thanks for everything we...
Yeah, prayer and gratitude is really important.
I
mean, this is just...
so many of those messages in the film Avatar, isn't it?
Avatar, yeah.
You should, be grateful for the food you receive. Everything's connected. And funny enough, they're trying to mine for a black rock.
Yeah.
The most valuable thing known to man is unobtainium, which is basically a black rock.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
you
many messages in that film.
You had a protein craving. That's right. Someone said you had a protein craving because your body needed that protein.
Well, again, in that film, look at the amount of trees that are being cut down.
Yeah.
Look at the size of them.
Yeah, the whole of them. I mean, what was it in Torquay the other day? The council did what can only be described as special operations vandalism job to cut down 40 palm trees in Torquay. That have been there for ages, that were there, and then they did it at night, so no one could see. So in the morning, people went out there. Where's the trees gone?
We've noticed a lot of trees being cut lately.
Yeah.
Where we live now. That's
and then we've got
something.
this allegedly geoengineered extremes of weather. I know. I'm just.
People can't see it. It's because they're looking at the phones, and they're not looking at the sky. Yeah.
I'm trying to be a bit politically correct there, but by using the legal term allegedly, that's what kind of
but yeah, they are cutting a lot of trees down at the moment.
Absolutely. And look at the stealth they've used in erecting these certain towers and cameras and all the rest of it. This is not transparent, and there's no consultation.
That's
really.
Right. And those towers were so important because we were going through the deadliest disease man had ever seen, the deadliest virus. But these towers, allegedly, that's right. But these towers just propped up during this pandemic.
Yeah.
Yep.
In the night.
Yeah.
When you're asleep, woke up in the morning, oh, there's another one. Have you seen the thickness of the cables on that? That's some serious current is going through those cables.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
I don't want any trees around them as well because they burn the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scorching the trees, aren't they?
Yeah.
But it's about giving thanks, and I mean, I don't mean I'm not religious, so it's not about praying to whatever, but it's about acknowledging it for yourself and you know your mind and your higher consciousness to say, actually, I'm grateful for what I've got and whatever food it is, the meat, the veg, etc. And because it raises your vibrations.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
because it makes you tap into feelings which a psychopath wouldn't have. So that would be the difference, because you can see it for what it's worth.
Exactly.
And value it.
Well, I mean, because I did the fast, I'm not sure I would have seen that if I hadn't have done the fast. But because I'd not eaten, I just drank for 15 days, then my body was recalibrating itself, which is what it does when you fast. That's one of the good things of fasting. It's like all that excess weight, they take all the nutrients it wants from that, because the body is an amazing thing if you just let it go on and do stuff.
Fast.
You know,
we actually should fast.
You know, but that really shocked me. And there's another guy who does the talks as well. You know, allegedly Dave.
Yes.
Well, he does UT as well, urine therapy, and I've tried that.
Not for me.
You know, well, I've given it a go. You see, I'll give it a go, but not anymore. But he's into fruitarian.
Yeah.
He really advocates all that kind of stuff, and I think, well, that's fair enough, Dave. But you're an Afro-Caribbean, you know, where your body comes from. You can get fruit 24/7, 365 days of the year.
Yeah.
Where I live, we only have it a little bit, and there's just grass. So there's, luckily for me, there's these things that can convert the grass that I can't eat into all the vitamins that I can consume when I eat that.
Yeah.
It converts it for me. So that's...
Well, when I came to England, because I'm from Sicily, I was 10 years old, and I grew up in the mountains in Sicily. So we grew, everything was natural, organic. Summers were summers, winters were winters. It was as it was. And when I came here, I'm going back, I was 10, I'm 49 now. I was so disappointed with the taste of the fruit and the veg and even the meat here. And I remember moaning to my mum, and I tasted an orange, and it tasted disgusting, and apples and everything, and tomatoes. I was like, what is this? Because different countries, you know, have different needs for that country. When you live in a hot country, because a very hot country, you probably do need more fruit because it does hydrate your body more. And we had it there. We had it in Sicily. The taste of the sun, the earth, the energy there created something different to what it does here. So again, you're right. You should eat for what is right where you are at that time.
And seasonally.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind living somewhere like that.
Well, exactly. You know, when you're living in a hot country where, you know, you have the sun in the first place, which gives you the vitamin D that your body requires every day.
And the clean water.
And the clean water and the fresh fruit with the vitamins it needs. And that's different. But when you are in a position where you're in a cold country, like England, and it's hard to grow anything anyway. And when you do, it's not the same tasting because you're still lacking the sun. So yeah, it's hard to have what you...
Well, when I came off the second fast, what I normally do is I because you don't want to get to straight hard solids, stuff like avocado's good. But I would have organic green apple juice. And where I just had the water, and this happened the first time I did the fast, there's no taste. Like that apple juice.
It's amazing.
I couldn't believe my mouth was having multiple orgasms. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God. It was just like,
It's amazing.
it was just unbelievable, the taste thing. Because the thing is you've got the taste thing here, the texture thing there. But once it's gone past this, your body doesn't care what it is. It's just processing it as nutrients and stuff. The taste doesn't come into it.
That's very true.
Not at all. It's just like, it's not going to look at, whatever you think is the most delicious thing in the world and give it any value at all. It's just looking at the nutrient thing of it. And is your body going to need it? Oh no, there's too much sugar in that. Oh, we're going to have to dump that out in the fat store we got there. That's getting a bit big, or we might have to open another one, until we can, process it, that excess.
We were touching on something earlier, which you made a lot of sense. And because obviously Jay and I are very, I'll mention this again. I'm struggle to, I couldn't hurt someone. I couldn't physically kill someone. It's not me. Whereas there's some people in this world that would quite easily get hold of the bad people in this world and not think twice about ridding them of this world. And we came back to a trial by jury. How would trial by jury work when the people are the jury? So you took a case, an example of the woman.
Yeah.
Yep. Who
poisoned her husband.
That's poisoned her husband. Can you sort of emphasize how that would work?
Well, see, law is based on empathy. That is the constitution of man. So the constitution of man does not need to be written down. In fact, as soon as you start writing stuff down, that means that people who have no right to read that can get hold of it, and they can take it down and use it against you.
Right.
All right. So there's big problems with stuff when it's written down, but we're talking about the natural constitution of man being as empathy. So if there's in a tribe or community, there's some controversy, then just get 12 people, 12 signs of the zodiac, different personalities, to exercise their empathy on the matter at hand, on whatever the controversy was. So in the case, for example, of the woman who poisoned her husband, and that's just for instance, when the witnesses are called, the jury sits there, and, just this, for instance, say the witnesses said, oh, I remember her getting beaten up and all the other stuff. He was really horrible to her and blah, 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 and all the other stuff. And so eventually, after hearing everything, all the testimony, the jury sits down, and like some of the possibly women members of the jury were going, blimey, I wouldn't have put up for that long. I'd have done them sooner,
Yeah.
or whatever. But there's the empathy, because it's putting yourself into another situation and really trying to feel what that was like. That's why in law it's really important to be judged or have a jury of your peers. And that's what's really important, because it's easier for them to put themselves into your situation if they are your peers. And so you really finely tuning any judgment, because basically the jury is the judge. The judge is just a wise elder that would provide sort of technical knowledge that the jury may need in order to be able to arrive at a just verdict. So they may, in this particular instance, need to know about the nature of the poison, or did it cause any pain, or was it like, no, it was a good poison. He didn't feel any pain at all. I just kept feeding him. He was dying nice and slowly, and all that stuff. Oh, that's nice of him. Come and get your dinner, love.
Yeah.
Bastard.
But they would empathise.
Yeah, they
she
would
was an abuser.
exercise the empathy, and they'd say, well, yeah, you murdered him, but all things considered, we're going to let you go. You've got to live with that. That's your consequence, and that. And, obviously his family aren't going to think very highly of you. Or maybe they did. Maybe they thought he was a wrong-un as well. But it's just that you have a flexibility with the jury and that you're exercising that empathy. In a legal court, a court of, what's it, in Salisbury's they call it, I can't remember the name now, where you don't have empathy. It's an authoritative court that you have just a judge or a tribunal. Again, from the Roman, there's tree there. It's like you don't have that equal standing, because again, with empathy, there's equality being extended there. You're putting yourself in someone else's situation, and you're trying to relate to someone else in their situation, for better or for worse or whatever. You're just sort of saying, and if they're all wrong, then that's the judgment that's going to be made.
So what you're saying is, in the world of law, there's no feeling.
There's
no feeling in the world of law. In the world of law, no. In the world of legal and corporation, there's no emotion. There's no feeling. In the living world, there is an emotion.
Yeah,
feeling.
It is. Yeah, that's because it's emotions that are going to drive you to commit a murder or to commit a crime or something like that. I mean, the French even, and they have their Napoleonic system of law. They have a thing that's called a crime of passion. Where you get a woman, she's with a guy, and the guy messes around, and she stabs him, and they'll say, well, at that moment, when she found out, she kind of lost the plot and was in a rage, and that's just the way it is. And
well, that's what happens when you mess with a hot-blooded woman.
Exactly. You wanted the passion, you wanted the hot blood, and all the other stuff. Well, it's come back to bite you on the arse, literally. And there's a great song by Ry Cooder, there's a musician I like, called That's the Way the Girls Are in Texas. And again, we've got common law in there. And he messed around with a girl and she killed him, she shot him. And he's like a ghost watching the court proceedings. And in the song he's going, she was guilty and I was dead. And what do you think the old judge said? Case dismissed, that's the way the girls are in Texas. It's a funny song, but again, it's the exercising of empathy. And there is experience of life involved there that's being exercised by 12 individuals. And they're putting themselves in that situation. Whereas in a legal court, a court of administration, that's the word I was looking for, in Salisbury's, that's not even a proper court.
No.
That doesn't even count as a proper court.
No.
In legal land, you're dead. You're a dead entity. So there's no passion. There's no empathy. It's a corporation. It's the dead talking. And the remedy's going to be, in the first step of court, is going to be financial.
Financial, that's right, yeah.
Because courtier means to deal in bails, bonds and sureties. That's where it came from, the Magyar Venetian thing that came over again with the pirates of 1066, and then reintroduced again over and over again, and they adopted the Venetian banking way of taking things over. And so that's the first thing. So they look for a financial remedy, and that, I'm not saying that that's wrong. There is some interesting ways of looking at that. For example, in the 17th, 18th century, there was the practice of wealthy gentlemen entering into a duel, which could cause a lot of problems for their families and wills and things like that. So it was a bit of extreme. I demand satisfaction, sir. 10 paces, and it's like, well, surely there must be a better way to remedy this. I mean, you're upset. Maybe we can do you for slander and sort out some financial thing. So there are reasons for legal.
Yeah.
It's just that, as with most things, it's become very unbalanced now.
Yes, absolutely.
It's very, in this country, the tradition was, before we were treasonously signed into the common market, that's the law. It was treason.
It was treason.
And Edward Heath should have been shot as opposed to hung, because he was a commissioned officer.
Yes.
And if you're a commissioned officer, you have the right to be shot as opposed to hung.
Yeah.
But he should have been shot. And they knew what he was doing was treason.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, at that time, the corruption in the Bar Association, was such that a defence of the standards of this nation that were expected to be defended failed miserably on all levels. And that should really be addressed in law. I doubt if it ever will be.
It won't. I mean, I think it was, what was his name? Alan, but Jess, we were just talking about him. Is it Alfred or Alan?
Oh, Albert Burgess.
Albert, that's right. He said that he'd done everything to report it, treason, and the police finally told him that they will not touch it. They're not allowed to touch it. And if they were to do anything about it, they would have to arrest every MP for the last 30 years. And this was 15 years ago. They are not allowed to go against Parliament.
1973.
They said at the time, 15 years ago, they said for the last 30 years. So obviously more. But the point is, it's all a big corporation, and police are not going to go against their handlers, are they? The corporations. But they're not going to touch it.
Well, but there is law and there is legal. So this is where it's become unbalanced. We've got way, way, way too much legal now.
Yes.
And we're almost, but not entirely, without law.
Because legal,
this is a nation of outlaws without law. It's a nation without law now.
Absolutely, because legal is the one that makes the money.
Well, again, that's the law of pirates. You know, there's so much stuff that's unlawful that put before a jury. There's so many acts, statutes, and instruments that would be annulled, completely annulled, because that's the check in any true democracy, is that a jury can annul anything, acts, statute, instruments that's passed by a so-called government. We've lost that, so we don't have a democracy. We're living under a tyranny.
Yeah.
If you don't have the ability to undo the legislation that's been spuriously or clearly manipulated by individuals other than the people, then that's a tyranny. And that's what was allegedly fought for in 2 world wars. So arrest every MP for the last 30 years, or why don't you just piss on the graves of all those that died doing that?
Yeah.
That's what I would have said to the chief constable. So next time on the 11th of the 11th, let's see you and all your guys go out there pissing on the graves of those that fought for our freedoms then.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that or arrest those MPs? Choice is yours. What do you think is right? Where does your empathy lie? Oh, I can't do empathy because I'm doing legal now. I'm doing my job. That's paying me. Well, just doing a job is in the Nuremberg Code is never and never will be a legitimate defence. You still got hung by the neck until dead. All those guards that were in the concentration camps, I was just doing my job, I was just following orders, they still got hung by the neck until dead.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, there's something I'll tell you about now that's coming to a head. That's quite interesting. Before the Nuremberg war trials, there was a situation created by a guy called Morgenthau. And they were they wanted to basically wipe out the Germans. But before the war ended, 11.5 million German servicemen and women surrendered. And because Hitler and Mussolini had signed up to the Geneva Convention, they surrendered as prisoners of war. Prisoners of war brings you to the next jurisdiction, canon law, and a principle called, I can't remember, but basically where you're obliged to provide cure and maintenance. The ancient laws of Elrond, that's what it's called. You're obliged to provide cure and maintenance. And it worked in the sense of that if you were sunk and you were in the water, even your enemy's ship would pick you up and cure your wounds and maintain you, because they could ransom you or they could hold you hostage, or that was what it was. You were supposed to provide cure and maintenance. So if someone surrendered as a prisoner of war, they were provided with cure and maintenance. Their wounds were treated and they were being maintained. They'd have a roof over their head, a bed, toilets, etc., etc. And that's what the Geneva Convention was all about. And we all signed up to all that kind of stuff. I don't think the Russians signed up to it, but that's what it was. Well, towards the end of the war, they rejiggered that. The Allies, or all lies, as some people want to talk, they claimed, or their argument was, that because Hitler and Mussolini declared their regimes to be the merger between state and corporation, then those German servicemen that surrendered, they must have been doing it for profit, and they weren't doing it for their sovereign nation. They were fighting for profit.
Yep.
So therefore they said, well, you can't be prisoners of war now. We're going to reclassify you as enemy combatants. Right? So they were reclassified as enemy combatants. And when they surrendered, and as soon as they were disarmed, they were then rounded up. A lot of them, millions. I've seen aerial footage of these camps. It's horrendous. And they were put in what was, or has become to be known as Rhin Meadows death camps. They were just put in fields with barbed wire fences around them, and that was it. No food, no maintenance, no healing of wounds and everything. We don't know how many died, but millions died. And the reason we don't know, because their names weren't taken, their dog tags weren't taken, and that at all. So we'll never know the answer to that. But that's the Rhin Meadows death camps. The irony is that in law, there's a maxim, or maxims in law are rules, standards, and bars that remain uncontested over time. Nobody has contested the Rhin Meadows death camps. So, in 1954, war was declared in that document, infamous document known as Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. So war is declared. We are in a state of war now.
Yep.
That being the case, what do we have now? What is our regime now in Europe? Is it not the merger between state and corporation?
Yes.
So does that not mean that enemy combatants used against sovereign people, could they be defined as enemy combatants?
Yes.
In which case they have no rights, none at all. They can be shot on sight, which is what happened in many cases. In fact, people would, the military would just empty guns into crowds of German prisoners in the fields because they had no rights. That was a rule, standards, and bar that has remained uncontested over time. Nobody has been brought to account from it. So that's a standard. And okay, the basis of that was that the regime was a merger between state and corporation. Well, what are the corporations doing? We have a sovereign currency.
Yep.
Okay, well, if it goes digital, that's no longer a sovereign currency, is it?
No.
That's an international corporate currency. Can you see the dilemma? Can you see the dilemma of a corporate officer getting into a conflict for profit with a sovereign, even citizen, I could say man or woman, and that sovereign uses reasonable force to defend their situation against...
I brought up earlier now about the pandemic treaty. Yeah? And that's basically all governments around, there's 198 countries, all part of the UN and all that lot, are all signing over all powers to the World Health Organization. If that happens, then there is no sovereignty. Because we'll be dictated to from a bunch of fucking unelected billionaire bureaucrat scumbags that are going to dictate what goes on in this country. So our government's already committed treason on us on the highest level by signing into the WHO pandemic treaty.
Well,
that's high treason.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but as far as I can make out, you're an Englishman.
Yes.
And no treaty that some foreigner's dead-talking corporation is going to sign to a fictional entity is going to change the fact that you're an Englishman. one is true, one is false.
Absolutely.
So it's a conflict for profit. Like you say, they are doing this for their own profit, which...
With the profit, it means that they consume. The profit is about consuming. The profit is about harvesting. The profit is about to dominate and control. It's malignant parasitism. We have an infestation of parasites in a number of sovereign nations. It's up to us what we want to do about it.
Much more is it evident now, the fact that we've watched over the last 3 years that all governments, in particularly the West, our side, are all in lockstep, committing tyranny and on their own people.
Well, the thing is that we can do a lot about it in law, but we can't do anything about it in legal because that's part of the problem.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very true, because we can't really do much in legal, because that's...
Yeah, well, the thing is, every court we go to is an administrative court,
absolutely,
which is only there to settle a debt.
Well, I explained it to someone. The Bar Association administrate. In most of the countries in the world, that's the model that is being adopted, whether they call it the British Accredited Registry or not. It's there to administrate. They're administrative courts. They're not lawful. Oh. They may be legal, but they're not lawful. So what we have is a situation where we have enforcement officers breaking the law to enforce a legal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. Put simply and succinctly, and in law.
It said that legal was created to destroy lawful.
No, was it?
Say again?
Legal was created to destroy lawful.
To undermine lawful.
No, it's just legal is the undoing.
Legal means the undoing of God's law.
God's law, yeah.
That's the situation. But with this cluster, the spectrum cluster B pathology is a very slow drip agenda that they're doing. So each generation knows less of what the further generation used to know. Like, for example, was it 1963? They got rid of Latin in the curriculum, so you no longer learn Latin. Well, there's a lot of stuff in law and medicine that has to do with Latin. So there's a process of dumbing down. Those that don't know their rights have none.
That's right.
That's the maxim you got to remember. And as men and women, we have rights under law, under God, and they are the most superior rights there are. Who is higher, a man or King Charles?
A man.
A man is higher because king is a title.
Yeah.
If he abdicated and was there as a man, then he'd have equality with another man.
Yeah.
It's a service commitment to being a monarch.
We all know who he's committed to, don't we?
But it's like today, we were watching the ticket man, and on the back of his, the parking ticket man, and he was walking around making sure that people in the car park got a ticket. But on the back of his ticket, it's civil enforcement officer. Civil. Because it is nothing to do with law. It is...
Absolutely. Well, look at it this way. If we're what's backing the currency, then you can remove all the, have free public transport. And if they want to take a photograph of your number, they just do what they normally do, zero the debt-based currency. Every debt is zeroed in 90 days. What they do is they'll take the paper that's generated by that debt and create a bill of exchange or a negotiable instrument, which they'll send on to an enforcement agency, which will try and give value to that and consent and get you to consent to give value to that claim. But they're just a third-party interloper. Absolutely. There is a system that can really work here. That we do say, okay, let's be straight about this. Let's back this currency because this is what happened. This is how they came to the conclusion. Abraham Lincoln was forced to create the greenback, because the international usury cartel were only going to lend him money to engage in his war against the Confederacy at ridiculous amounts of interest, and he couldn't afford it. So he asked his treasurer, what can we do? He said, just interest money on the goodwill and commitment of the people and fight your war. And so the people accepted that as currency. The same thing was done, but again manipulated by the international usury cartel in around 1915 during the First World War, where at the beginning of the war, as soon as people knew there was a war, they were taking their promissory note and going to the bank and wanting to get the silver back. They wanted to cash the promise into the real 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional reality material, real money, proper money, weight of metal. And of course, that started a run on the banks. Well, of course, for every pound of silver there was in the bank could lend another £9 at interest. So every pound you draw out, they lost £9 an interest. And they were in the business of making loans in order to get the factories together to get the war together. So they had to put a stop on it. So a guy called Bradbury came up and said, well, why don't we do what Abraham Lincoln did? We'll have the Bradbury pound printed against the goodwill of the people. And the people in that time were all joined together, and it's like, we're all in this together, we've got to fight this war. Right, we'll back the currency. It wasn't sold like that, but that's what backed the pound. And as soon as the run stopped, they kept the Bradbury pound going for a while, and as soon as they thought they could get away with it and no one was looking, they got rid of it. So we could always have that currency, a currency backed by us, which is what it is, which is what we've got now. It's just that we have these individuals with a mental health disorder who want to dominate and control, and that manipulated the situation in 1933, Colonel Mandel House, with the birth registration thing and all that kind of stuff, and all the skullduggery, which is what the term is. It's the same cult, in order that they may continue with their malignant parasitism for whatever thing it is they're believing, but they don't want to connect. So we could really connect. There's no reason at all on this earth. There is no man or woman on this earth that is in debt. Sounds crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But there is not one man or one woman on this earth that is in debt. Only names and surety names and IDs and fictions and persons and corporations.
And we've all got titles as well.
All titles, all of it.
Mr.,
Miss, Mrs., Capitis, Maximus, Dominius, all that malarkey.
Yeah.
But men and women are the creditors. The fact is, even they accept that because we're backing their currency. We're standing surety. It's like you're sat outside a casino and some guy comes up to you and says, I want to go in there and do some gambling. If I lose, will you pay the money? And you go, yeah.
That's exactly
And so he goes in there and gambles with it. He comes out and he goes, sorry, I lost. Or he goes in there and wins and comes out and says, I'm sorry, I lost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true, isn't it? Whichever way you look at it, if they lose, it doesn't matter. If they win, they get to keep it, and we still lose either way.
Well, look at the banking crash in 2009. We bailed the banks out, and all the top bankers still got their massive
absolutely,
payouts,
because
bonuses. They were getting bonuses, but they lost everyone's money.
Yep, and there you have that mental health disorder, that cluster B pathology. Because you're just cattle to them. You're just something to harvest. You have no rights.
Useless eater, please.
Useless eater.
Useless. What's it? Fucking Harari's come up with a new one, isn't it? What's it called? He's got a new saying for us, isn't it? It's not the useless eaters. It's useless class. Useless class.
Yeah.
And how many useless classes do we need in the world now? We need to get rid of them.
Yeah.
The useless class.
Well, maybe he could change that slightly and call it the usury class.
Usury, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, look I just shared yesterday, or this, I can't remember if it this morning, in the House of Lords, they paid £90,000 for one bottle of champagne for their parties. And that's not even to the drugs and the women there, but 90,000. Exactly.
But if I had a lump of gold here, there's no way that lump of gold is going to breed with itself and create more gold, is it?
No.
All right. So if I issue a debt-based currency, okay, and I go out and I spend it myself and buy real assets and that devalues that debt-based currency. I can charge interest on it, which means I can issue more of it. So I'm actually making it more and more and more. I'm letting it breed with itself, which is impossible in nature. And this is why when I was a kid and I first started smoking, number 6 cost me 21p.
Yeah.
20 cigarettes now will cost over 10 quid.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Right. It's not because the prices go up. It's because the money is worth less because the guys controlling it are
wanting us to go digital.
Well, they're juggling with it. They're devaluing it. They're cashing it in to get real assets, and they're gambling with it on stock markets and stuff like that, going into the casino, winning and losing. And all we're getting is less and less and less value out of that currency.
That's such a quite.
And so all we need is some people that are in honour, that aren't going to do this gambling and all this malarkey, that don't have this mental health disorder, whether it's psychopathy or narcissistic personality disorder. Both are without empathy.
Yeah, but the crazy thing is, they're actually getting most of us so-called awake people to gamble without realising we're gambling, because what they're saying to us is if it's investment, right? So if you get involved in stocks, shares, trading, crypto, this, that and the other, you're still trying to make money, but to make money you might have to lose money. It's gambling. But people are doing it because they're so desperate for money. They don't, even good people are trying to make money because they're so fearful of having no money.
Again, this is about consumption, isn't it? This is about competition. It's all about stuff, competing people up against each other, playing them off against each other. And all the time they're cashing it in, controlling it. And the technology's advancing and they're getting their stuff. And people need to realize we're being manipulated by aliens.
Yeah.
And aliens. They put a lien on your life. That's what happens when your birth is registered. A lien is put on your life. A lien is put on whatever it was the grantor of dominion gave you, and they convert it into something that they can use, that you're then now standing surety from. That's called piracy.
Yeah.
And it's not true. It's fraudulent, and it's based on violence, and it's consuming the whole planet, and it's consuming a lot of people and loads of stuff. And until enough people wake up and they say, look, we've got to get back to law. This narcissistic version, copy, cut and paste version, this legal thing, this is the undoing. This is the undoing of, not only the undoing of God's law, it's the undoing of every individual that gets corrupted by it, the world, everything in it. This death cult. This is why it's got corporations, corpse rating. We're all dead talking. We're all frozen on ice. It's all the law of the sea because they're pirates. They've come ashore and they practice their piracy on the land. It's got to stop. We've got to get back to the law of the land.
Yeah.
What's your views on the right to bear arms?
The right to bear arms?
Yeah.
I think
they're so desperately trying to disarm the whole world, aren't they?
Well, they're trying to put down breeds of dog now in this country.
Absolutely, because why? I was discussing this with Laura earlier. So, at the end of the day, if you're wanting to come through someone's door with a red key, i.e. open it yourself, you're going to be very less reluctant to want to do it if there's a couple of Bully XL standing behind the other side of the door, right?
Exactly.
So it's now becoming a threat to the people that want to enter your house and take your house illegally, unjustifiably. And they don't like the fact that we're arming ourselves, and be it with a dog or whatever. But everyone has the right to bear arms, right? Everyone has the right to protect their castle.
Well, every man and woman have the right to bear arms, but slaves on a plantation don't. Otherwise, the overseers wouldn't be able to deal with them.
And that's what we are, slaves. To them, anyway. Let me just.
America is really the only country that's still got that right, but they're so desperate with all these, false flag events of, college shootings and all this lot, because they want everyone to hand their guns in.
Well, that's what they're doing. I can only.
Could you just randomly go through a street in Texas and start kicking through people's doors saying we're going to take your shit.
I don't think you kick down many doors before someone in the street.
And all the neighbours would join in as well and say, what are you doing kicking my neighbour's door in? I've got guns too.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and this is the problem. You see, we have in law constables, and that's a service commitment, a very noble service commitment. You know, and we have a military, again, you know, that is a service commitment. We have a civil service that is supposed to be a service commitment. We have a monarch. We should have a monarchy that is a service commitment. All these are things that offer stability and balance in our society. But we've got completely out of balance now. Everything is there to be put back in place. We just need to remove these individuals with these mental health disorders, you know, because that's what the problem is. That's the real pandemic, very real pandemic. This wanting to dominate, control, gaslight, manipulate, consume, corrupt. I mean, the best way to create, if you're one of these elite families that has all this magic stuff that gives you control, and you produce offspring, and unfortunately it doesn't turn out to be a psychopath, it doesn't matter. You can take it along to some ritual, terrify the crap out of it, and say, this is what happens to you.
Yep. Right?
Or you take part in that, you kill that kid or something like that. This is what goes on. There's plenty of documented evidence of that. And so the capacity to empathy goes, or just abandon them, send them off to a public school somewhere where they can get buggered. You know, all that stuff. I mean, these people go through trauma at some point. All right, they might end up as lifetime actors being politicians or rock stars or something like that, but at some point, unless they had that genetic component, they were traumatized so traumatized to be in a situation that they, and I think the important thing is to remember here is the Native American expression, that when you're in a state of trauma, survival instinct kind of kicks in. We have two wolves inside of us, a black wolf and a white wolf. And the one that becomes the most dominant one is the one we choose to feed. So if you choose to feed the black wolf and become the dark guy and shut down and start getting off on the nasty stuff, the lower vibrational stuff, then that's your choice. That's your free will and choice. Because some of these people, they go through the same trauma and they choose to feed the white wolf, and they don't end up as narcopaths or narcissistics or sociopaths or anything like that. They're able to rise above that, and at the same time have a certain amount of insights as well to what's going on. So this is a cult that we're dealing with. That's why I call it an occult art of law. A cult, or occult art of law. You know, and we need to turn around and do a 180 and go back. We need to, people are using more cash now. We need to get down the 5G cameras, all that stuff, all that stuff. You know, that it needs to go backwards, and whoever put that in, they need to be tried in courts of law. They need to have mental health assessments, because this is a clear, it's a clear and present danger. It needs to be addressed, and this mental health disorder that people seem to be not able to recognize because they're too traumatized. I recognize it. Lots of people recognize it. You know, and it's easy to be able to test for, and that's it. And anybody that's made these decisions or been in a situation where they have authority over others or authority over assets of more than £2 million, they should mandatorily go in for a test for empathy to make sure they've got healthy levels of empathy. If they don't, they lose that position because they're not fit to have authority over other people.
Which is the irony, isn't it? Because all the people in power say that if you've got empathy, you're not fit to have that position, because without control and fear, there is no power.
Yeah, well, they're narcissists, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Everyone that's in control of the world right now doesn't have empathy because they can't have empathy, because if they did, they start caring about the people, and in order to be in control and in power, you've got to not care about the people.
When I was,
you'd have an outbreak of peace, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Well, we can't have that.
No.
when I was young, my mum used to say to me, only narcissists will become powerful, because normal people who care don't want that power.
No. And people need to see this whole corporate thing is the creation of that narcissistic or psychopathic quality of consciousness. The whole legal system, all of it, it's all in place because of that. You know, and we've got an alternative. It's called law.
My question to you earlier was, in the olden days, obviously the punishment was different in the old days. If you took a life, you lost your life. And my question to you was, if someone's committed murder and they're condemned to death, and there's an executioner that's there to either pull the guillotine or swing the axe that cuts off the head, the person that's being executed for being a murderer, now the executionist is actually doing the same crime, however he's delivering justice. Does that make the executioner evil?
Well, I don't know. Is the answer to that?
He's only delivering justice. This man has killed this boy, this child, that woman, whatever, and he's been condemned to death. In the old days, the only way to do that was guillotine, hanging, or beheading, right? Now, my question to you was, the executioner is only doing... I'm only doing my job.
I'm only doing my job.
But he's delivering justice. Now, this person's been condemned to get death. There has to be an executioner. Is the executioner evil? I don't think so, because that's something I'd like to do. Because she says, oh, I couldn't harm someone. But the thing is, between the pair of you, if you was the judge and the jury, and you condemn the person, I'm quite happy to do
the execution.
Well, I struggle with dealing with my own stuff. But if you're happy to do that, and that's your vocation, and that's what you're offering to the community, then that's fine.
Yeah.
It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it, right?
Exactly. I mean that's it.
It's a moral issue. That's
but
right.
Fair enough if I was granted the job of being the executioner, and I purposely swing an axe and stick in someone's spine and start twisting it.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, that I get. They say, hang about. You're now committing a lot of.
I'm living with a sick man.
Excess pain. You're only there to take the head off, and now you're wiggling it in his spine.
Yeah, you're not doing your job properly.
No, but if you do it cleanly, professionally.
Yeah.
Hit the fucking neck and off with the head.
Are you thinking,
whatever it is you do, you've got to live with it
I'm
yourself.
just saying, if it was Bill Gates or whatever, you might accidentally.
I would think you might have. I think you'll have a problem there with Bill Gates, because there'll be a whole queue ahead of you.
Yes.
Wanting to do the same
I'm
thing.
self-appointed myself.
Right, should we have some pudding?
Indeed, that sounds.
Right, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. And this is Alan of Salisbury. A few people of you have asked, who is this gentleman? This is Alan of... I think Jay needs the psychopath test. I think you could be right there, Wiki.
Really?
Yeah. All right, much love to everyone. See you soon. Bye.